So the first thing is welcome. This is a shoulder workshop. I am beyond excited about sharing this content with you guys. I have put loads and loads of work into making it a workshop that really is super interactive, that's going to have lots of little breaks from the screen, because I know that 3 hours in front of your laptop is a huge investment. So first of all, thank you so much for giving up your Sunday and such a huge chunk of time. It means so much to me. To really get the most out of this workshop, I highly recommend getting yourself some earphones if you have, or a little speaker. But don't worry if you don't have that. It just adds that extra little bit of, I'll always be right here with you if we do move about to the mat and back to your laptop. Obviously, having a notebook and pen, I think, is going to be a good thing to have. If you haven't yet got a pen and paper, go grab one now. And of course, we are going to do some movement, guys. So if you haven't yet got your mat, go grab that. I did mention that it would be nice if you guys had a couple of blocks. But if you don't have blocks, it's really not a big deal. I'll show you the exercise. You can make a note of it in your notebooks. And you guys can always do that at some point when it's convenient. And also, guys, I don't know about you, but whenever I teach these anatomy workshops, I really feel like one of the best ways to make it a fun experience is to make it interactive. And so almost the whole time when I'm teaching live, I'll be asking questions, because I really want to kind of not just talk at you guys the whole time, but really get you guys to be involved with me. Now, obviously, I realize that being on a Zoom call, if everybody had their sound off, it would be a bit of chaos. So what I'm going to say is to kind of keep the engagement and to really keep you guys with me for the duration of the workshop. As I ask questions, make sure you type them into the typing box. So I'll be like, you know, what is this, internal, external? And you guys can quickly type in internal. And I think that A, what that's going to do is keep you guys really on the ball with me. And B, what that's going to do is it's going to help me really assess, oh, hang on, we need to spend a little bit more time explaining this, because there's a few people that maybe don't quite get it. So don't be afraid to jump into the chat box and do that. Also, it obviously is going to be super good if you can ask me questions. And there is two ways of doing that. One, you can type your question into the chat box, or two, you can actually raise your hand. And if you go to the participants list at the bottom, there is a little button. I think it's more. If you click that, there should be an option to raise your hand. And once you've raised your hand, I think on the iPhone or on an iPad, you've got to click more as well. There's like a little button. Have a little play around near the participants list. There's a few little options. Once you raise your hand, you'll be spotlighted. You can speak directly to me. You can be like, oh, Sal, I've got this problem, or I've got a student, or whatever question you want to ask. If I don't get the opportunity to answer your question, make a note of it in your notebook. And then email me. I've put my email in the chat box already, and I'm going to compile a document for you guys. There's going to be references. There's going to be the notes that I'm using as the slideshow today. There's going to be questions that I didn't get to answer. I'm going to put a lot of time into this email, which I'm going to send you guys afterwards. So if I don't get around to it, don't worry. I'm going to really make every effort to get around to everybody's questions. And all you need to do is just make a note of it at somewhere. And also at some point we are going to have a little bit of group work, and Zoom is so clever. It actually can group you guys up. So if you're like, oh, you know, I'm not comfortable with that, don't worry. You can always put your camera off and go to the loo and get a cup of tea. But I really encourage you guys to work in groups, because whenever I've taught anatomy in the past, I really feel that the group work helps to solidify concepts. So again, really take advantage of that amazing feature that this app has given us. And then just to give you a quick rundown of some of the things, I mentioned the group work. There's going to be lecture format. Obviously, I'll be chatting to you guys with a slideshow. There's going to be a couple of little videos I want to show you guys. We'll be moving on our mats. And also just sometimes so that you guys don't fall asleep, we'll just dance around for like 30 seconds, get our energy up, get our heart pumping, and then we'll come back and focus. So that's just to make sure you guys don't end up falling asleep in front of your laptop, okay? Finally, I've got Yarden. He's the producer on Live Kick. He's going to be walking us through all the tech. So if you have any technical issues throughout the workshop, again, just jump into the chat box and Yarden will definitely be able to help you guys. Are we ready? Feeling good? Okay, awesome, guys. So let me just see. Hey, Celeste, can you please share the password for the meeting? The link isn't opening my app. So I think Yarden will be able to help you with that, my love. So guys, are we ready to rock? Let's go into the first slide. I need to be on speaker view, I think, for that to work. There we go. Okay, so guys, I've got little slides for us. The first one is just the title, shoulder to shoulder, but the next one really starts getting into the content of this workshop. Now, one of the things that I think is really important to understand about the shoulder is that it is one of the most complex joints in the whole body. You know, often when I talk about the shoulder and I ask people the question, where's your shoulder? People will point like this, oh, it's this joint over here. But guys, actually, this is just one part of the shoulder. The shoulder is made up of 4 different joints. So you can imagine the complexity thereof. Also, this joint, for our survival, has to have the biggest range of motion. I mean, if you right now with me, where you are on your laptop, just give me a little bit of funky movements with your arms. I mean, the variety of this joint is more than any other joint in the entire body. And we need that for our survival. We had to rip out roots, throw spears, we had to swim and climb. So we need that amount of range to ensure our survival. But of course, modern life means that we don't express that amount of variety. What do? We wake up, we text, we go to the toilet, we maybe brush our hair, brush our teeth. Maybe getting dressed will get a little bit more range going on in the body, but then we'll sit down, drive, type. And we never ever expressing the full capacity of what our shoulders are able to give. And as a repercussion of that, I mean, already it's a very vulnerable joint, but it's becoming more and more vulnerable because people don't fully understand that you need to use this joint in a multitude of ways for it to stay healthy. And you might be like, but hang on, I do yoga. You know, yoga's got loads of fun arm positions. And you know what? It absolutely does. It's one of the reasons I love yoga. But as you'll see, when we move through the content, you'll see it does have a bias. And that is why multiple forms of training are so important to keep our bodies healthy. So let's go on to the next slide, where we're going to just cover a few anatomical movements. Now, guys, if you don't remember the fancy names of this stuff, don't worry. I just want to run through it because it's going to be a little bit easier for you to understand some of the concepts that we're going to go through. And you guys can actually do this with me. I think it'll be a bit more fun. Maybe stand up so we don't get too static. And I want you to do elevation of the shoulders. Lift your shoulders all the way up towards your ears. That's it. Elevation, like you're getting into an elevator and it's taking you up to the top floor. And then depression. Depression is a low energy usually in people. It's a down energy. And that is when the shoulders move down as well. So you've got elevation and depression. And then we have protraction and retraction. So if you stick your arms out towards me and you press away towards your laptop or your iPad, that is your shoulders going into protraction. Now imagine you're grabbing me or the laptop or your iPad and you're pulling it back in towards you, trying to get a good old look at the slide. This is your retraction. So protraction and retraction. But then the one that is often not discussed very often, and I want to show you. So maybe come a little closer to the screen. Yarden's going to spotlight me, and I want you guys to look at upward and downward rotation of the scapula, because this one, I feel not a lot of people speak about how the shoulders need to move. Let's see if I can get into a good position. Upward and downward rotation. So you can see the point of the scapula and how it swings from down out this way. So it goes out and down, upward rotation and downward rotation. And later on, you guys are going to see why it's so incredibly important for us to know about upward and downward rotation. So let's pop back to the slides. Just quick recap. Elevation, shrug your shoulders with me. That's it. Depression, draw your shoulders down. Hands forward, protraction, maybe say the word protraction, and then pull it back in, retraction. Okay, awesome. So let me just go back onto speaker view. Okay, so we also have, so that is all of our scapulothoracic movements. We're going to go over the joints in more detail. So if you had to take one hand and stick it on your back and you had to shrug that shoulder or do a circle, that is where the shoulder blade lies on the ribs. But that's only one part of your shoulder. As you move your hand down, this is where most people think of as their shoulders. We have movements here as well. So again, stand up with me. I'm not going to be too passive. We're going to do shoulder flexion, where the arm lifts up here. And then we're going to do shoulder extension, where the arm moves backwards. One more, Yarden. Guys, and you know what? Every time I teach shoulder flexion and extension, everyone gets super confused. So a little hack. Actually, a student taught me this, and I thought it was genius. If ever you're confused, think of this as a ball and socket joint. So make a fist with one hand like this, and slot your fist into your other hand like this, right? Now, you guys tell me quickly in the chat box, where is another ball and socket joint in the body? So you know there's one here. Where's another one? Quickly, let's see if you guys got this. Yes, good. Yes, 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 yes. It's exciting seeing all your little words pop up. Hip. So with a hip, if I told you guys, flex your hip, all of you guys are going to do this, right? But we forget the shoulder is just the same thing. It's just up here. If I told you to extend the hip, it's backwards. Shoulder extension is back here. And the reason why I go over this is sometimes people are in downward dog and they're like, I'm going into full extension. And guys, obviously, who cares if you get the names a little bit wrong? Just remember that if you're working with anatomy, sometimes being precise sometimes is helpful. So this one is flexion, this one is extension. Now, relax your arms down by your side. We're now going to do abduction and adduction. So Yarden, you can go back to the slides, please. Take your arms out to the side, lift them up, and then bring it all the way down. One more slide, Yarden. That's it. Take your arms out to the side. That is your abduction. For my non-English speakers in the house, have you ever watched a film where they had to like abduct someone and then they're asking for ransom money? It's because they're removing that person away. So abduction is always away from the body. Adduction, we're adding the arms back to the body. And then if you give me a 1980s Barbie doll, you know, like the little bent elbows like this, give me internal rotation and external rotation. That one's fairly self-explanatory, internal and external rotation. Where it gets tricky, and guys, I've even had doctors get this one wrong, so don't even feel funny if this happens to you. I'm gonna get you guys to combine two of them. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to flex your shoulders, and I want you to do internal rotation. Give me internal rotation. I'm going to quickly switch to gallery view because I want to look at you guys. Yeah, stay there. So just keep your arms straight, don't bend them, and give me internal rotation. I'm just checking you guys out. Nice. Okay, come back. Guys, whenever it gets confusing up there, a lot of times we use the hand as a reference point. And up there, things switch a little bit. So if ever you're not sure, oh God, is this internal or external up here? A little hack, which you might want to write down, is come back into your anatomical position. Just stand like this. Be like, yeah, okay, got it. And do your rotation from this position. So in this instance, let's do our internal rotation. And then let's lift the arms up. And notice what position the humerus is in. It's maybe a bit different because sometimes people turn the little fingers in. Same with external rotation. Come back down to your little anatomical man, do external rotation, and then lift the arms up. And guys, the reason why that's important is we weight bear on our arms in yoga a lot. So understanding where the humerus has the opportunity to turn is really important. And as I move through the content, you're going to see we need balance. And sometimes that balance is tip the scales. So does that all make sense? Are you guys feeling good? Let's carry on with the slides now. We're going to move on to the different bones. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to grab my little model, and I'm going to also get you guys to touch yourselves, because I feel like once you've kind of gotten into your own body, you're going to remember so much better. So the very first thing we're going to take a look at is the clavicle. And a lot of people don't even think of this collarbone, this bone here, you can touch it on yourself, as being a part of your shoulder. But just trace your fingers along yours. Just be like, okay, part of my shoulder, awesome. And then take your hand around towards your back, the back. And again, just give me that little shoulder shrug where you can actually feel the shoulder blade gliding around. Okay, your scapula, shoulder blade, collarbone, clavicle. And then your third bone is your arm bone. So just stroking it out. Cool. So you've got clavicle, shoulder blade, or scapula, and the humerus. So next we're going to start to understand the bony landmarks. So we're going to go into the next slide. And guys, the bony landmarks, again, have really sometimes big names, and sometimes you might be like, there's no way I'm going to remember this. Or, 2 weeks later, you might forget it. You've got families and jobs. Don't worry about the fancy names. My job today is to get you to understand these landmarks exist, because you're going to see later why that's quite nice. So I want you to pay attention to this one here, and you're going to palpate it on yourself. So take one hand, put it over your shoulder, and I want you just to lift the shoulder up and down, and I want your fingers to go like this over that bony landmark. Bony landmark up and down. Now that's part of your shoulder blade. In fact, most of the bony landmarks right now we're going to discuss, and they're pretty much all on the shoulder blade. And I want you to feel this one. It's called the spine of the scapula. So as you can see, there's still a bit above that part of your scapula, and there's obviously a massive part below. But that spine is quite nice to understand because it's going to give you clues about some of the muscle names that we're going to go into later. So spine of the scapula is your first one. Next one, if you trace your fingers along the spine of the scapula, all the way across, 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 you're going to get to like a flat bit. And that is called the acromion. Now, a quick side, someone's asking if I can be bigger. Little tip, guys, if you hover your mouse by the double line next to my screen, you can drag me across to the left and I'll be bigger. So then you'll see. Hopefully that helps, Marina. Okay, guys, so there's a flat bit here. Now, quick side story. When I was at, I dropped out of school at 16. I was not getting it. And by a series of amazing strokes of luck, I ended up in university studying physiotherapy. Now, it was a heavy, heavy degree. And to get the names of this stuff in my head, let me tell you, was a real big challenge. But someone gave me really good advice. And I really want to share this advice with you guys when you're learning anatomy. They said, if ever you're looking at a funny word, try and relate it to something you already know. And this acromion is really nice to know that it exists, guys, because so many injuries are related to this, the position of this bone. It's still part of your scapula. It's not a separate bone. This acromion is just a continuation of the spine of the scapula. And I was like, acromion, how am I going to get that in my head? And eventually I thought of like an 80s jacket with massive shoulder pads made of chrome. So maybe that helps you as well. A little chrome shoulder pad, the acromion. Keep your fingers now traveling back to your collarbone, and literally on the end of it, right underneath it, you're going to feel a little bump. So fingertips, there's the collarbone right to the edge. Just underneath it, there's a little bump. And this one also has a fancy name. It's called the coracoid process. The coracoid process. Guys, just want to get this in your head. This took me ages to figure out, by the way. That's why I'm making a meal of explaining it to you. You might be smarter than me. This is still a part of the scapula. So everything that we have touched so far is your scapula. This bony landmark, the spine, the acromion, and even this little funny thing. And I think the Latin translation is something like the beak, a beak of an eagle or something, acromion. And it literally is like a little beak sticking out. And if you look on the image on the slides, on the image on the left, you'll see it's like a weird little tongue kind of sticking out. And again, don't worry about the fancy name, but knowing it exists is really helpful, especially for us yogis that do lots of chaturangas, and we're going to go into that later. The last part of the shoulder blade that I want to show you guys, and I'm going to use my other model to show you guys, is called the glenoid fossa. And I think it's a little bit easier to see. So the glenoid fossa, again, give me your cup, give me your arm bone, put the two together. The cup is your glenoid fossa. It's still a part of your shoulder blade, but it's the socket within which the arm bone lives. The thing about it is, what we're doing right now is we're pretending we're the hip, because the hip is like a juicy cup and it really wraps around the hip bone. It's not really like that for the shoulder. The shoulder is very shallow, and that's a good thing on one hand because we have lots of range, we're not limited. But on the other hand, remember that vulnerability, right? If it's a very shallow socket, you've got this huge head of the humerus, living inside this tiny, shallow socket. You can imagine that it's a recipe for disaster, and it's often why some people dislocate their shoulders. So the glenoid fossa, I'm going to show you, let me see if I can come closer to the camera, is literally this little rim here. I'm going to show you also on my other model in case it's clearer. It's actually a different color on the model, which is helpful. This gray bit here is the glenoid fossa. And then the last funny little bony landmark that I want you guys to know about is, it's so beautiful in this model, is this groove here. This groove here. Thanks, Yarden, you ledge. And at the moment, this groove, it's called the bicipital groove, it's sort of covered up by this almost like a little hairband thing, because the hairband is showing you that it is the long head of the biceps tendon. Well, don't worry about that. Just know you have a bicep. They've got two. You've got a long head and a short head. The long head literally goes in that groove. And again, the nice reason why I think you should know this groove exists and you should know the tendon runs in that groove is because that groove sometimes gets irritated with some of the biomechanics we're going to discuss, how people always end up a bit funny with their shoulder movements. It almost ends up fraying like a rope. So we want to know this exists just for that reason. How are we doing so far? Cool? Awesome. So quick recap, spine of the scapula. Acromion, yeah, you guys are going to get these notes, okay? So don't worry, I'm going to put it all in the email for you. Spine, acromion, coracoid process, and then you've got your little bicipital groove. Let's go on to the next slide, because now we're going to look at joints and how they connect to each other. Now, everybody knows Brad Pitt and everyone knows Angelina Jolie, and when they were together, we called them Brangelina. Yarden, go back one. Yeah, the other way, go backwards. That's the one. So Brangelina, right? We all know Brangelina. Now your joints in your shoulder have done the same marriage. They've taken two bones and they've smushed the words together. So your sternum, touch your sternum, connects to your clavicle. And this is the sternoclavicular joint. And yes, this is part of your shoulder. In fact, the sternum is the only connection point of your whole shoulder girdle to the axial skeleton. I'm going to say that all again. This little tiny baby joint that you're touching right now, this little bump, is the only connection point that your whole shoulder has to your axial skeleton, which is crazy. It's another reason why this is a very vulnerable joint. So that's your sternoclavicular joint. Trace your fingers with me now all the way down the sternum to that flat bone. You know where we called it the acromion? Because where the collarbone meets the acromion, that is called your acromioclavicular joint. And you can kind of have a little feel. There's a few little lumps and bumps in there. Don't worry about exactly if you can't feel it. Maybe move around, that'll help. But basically, that is another connection point. Let's now take our hand all the way around onto our back again. This is your your scapulothoracic joint. And this is not a true joint. So when you think of joints, there's a bone, it has a big old smushy capsule wrapped around it. Inside it, there's a bit of fluid. The scapula laying on top of the rib cage is something called a false joint. It's called a false joint because really this big scapular bone just lives in a bed of muscles. And what's really important to remember is that the shape of the ribs, you see how they're curvy like this? The shape of the scapula is curvy as well. They fit together like puzzle pieces so that the scapula can glide. But this is another reason why muscular strength of around your scapula is so important, because there's nothing else really connecting it to the body. One more joint. So we've covered sternoclavicular, acromioclavicular, thoracic, scapulothoracic. We have one more. Take your hand, pop it on your shoulder, and just give your arm a little move about. That one is your glenohumeral joint. Now remember the glenoid fossa. Give me your cup. Give me your humerus. Glenoid, humerus, glenohumeral joints. Okay. So if you hear me say about the glenoid fossa, just think, oh yeah, that's the shoulder socket, the very vulnerable, baby, tiny little socket. Now, I want you guys to obviously, it's one thing looking at a two-dimensional screen with slides and my little models, but I think the video that I'm going to show you next is going to be so amazing for you to see, because what it's going to do is it's actually going to take all of your skin off, all of the capsules, all of the muscles, and you're going to really get to zoom in and look at how things fit together from the inside out. So we're going to play the video now. Video 1 up next.
The shoulder is an elegant piece of machinery. It has the greatest range of motion of any joint in the body. However, this large range of motion can also lead to shoulder joint problems. Understanding the different parts of the shoulder can help you understand how the shoulder works, how it can be injured, and how challenging recovery can be when the shoulder is injured. The important structures of the shoulder can be divided into several categories. These include bones, joints, ligaments, tendons, muscles, nerves, blood vessels, and bursa. The bones of the shoulder are the humerus, or the upper arm bone, the scapula, or the shoulder blade, and the clavicle, or the collarbone. The roof of the shoulder is formed by a part of the scapula called the acromion. There are actually 4 joints that make up the shoulder. The main shoulder joint, called the glenohumeral joint, is formed where the ball of the humerus fits into a shallow socket on the scapula. This shallow socket is called the glenoid. The acromioclavicular, or AC joint, is where the clavicle meets the acromion. The sternoclavicular, or SC joint, supports the connection of the arms and shoulders to the main skeleton on the front of the chest. A false joint is formed where the shoulder blade glides against the rib cage. This joint, called the scapulothoracic joint, is important because it requires that the muscles surrounding the shoulder blade work together to keep the socket properly aligned during shoulder movement. Articular cartilage is the material that covers the ends of the bones of any synovial joint. Articular cartilage is about 1/4 of an inch thick in most large, weight-bearing joints. It is a bit thinner in joints such as the shoulder, which don't normally support weight. Articular cartilage has a rubbery consistency. It is very slippery, which allows the joint surfaces to slide against one another with very little friction. Articular cartilage functions to absorb shock and provide an extremely smooth surface to make motion easier. There are several important ligaments in the shoulder. Ligaments are soft tissue structures that connect bones to bones. The joint capsule is a watertight sac that surrounds a joint. In the shoulder, the joint capsule is formed by a group of ligaments that connect the humerus to the glenoid. These ligaments are the main source of stability for the shoulder.
Okay, that's the end of the video, my loves. Hopefully, kind of zooming in and really looking at what's under your skin was helpful. I'm actually, when I send you the email, we'll send you the link. It's a YouTube video. I love that guy. I especially love how he says bones. Huh? Bone to bone. It's really good. Okay, right. Now, the next thing we want to start looking at the muscles. So let's go back to the slides. Yeah, oh, thank you, Sephora. It is a really good video. So you're going to have that in your library. And guys, you know what? I speak from experience when I say I have to go back to videos and I have to look back on Google for the terminology, because it's one of those things, it's like a language. If you're not practicing it all the time, sometimes your memory will forget. It doesn't mean that you aren't clever and you don't know a lot. Really, don't give yourself a hard time about being like, what's that called again? I need to look it up. Save that video, because I think that that video, there's more of it, and you'll see it when as we go through the workshop. There's so many good things in that video. Okay, one more slide, Yarden. Can you go forward? Yes. Okay, to the rotator cuff. Now, guys, whenever I quiz people, what is the rotator cuff? I get some really, really funny answers. And I think people know that it's this thing that exists, but exactly what it is kind of vague. So we're going to run through it. But the most important thing, again, is I want you to understand that the biomechanics related to it, that's really important. So if the names are a bit long and a bit quick, don't stress. The rotator cuff. Now, if I had to wear a shirt, a really nice shirt, all buttoned up with my collar, the cuff around my wrist is the part of material that wraps around my wrist. And the rotator cuff is the same thing. It's a collection of muscles that wraps around your scapula. It's also, you can get the name gives you all the clues. It's also a collection of muscles that enables rotation. So the first one is infraspinatus. So it's just there on the left side. It's called infraspinatus. And basically, if you think of the name, remember this bone. Can anyone remember the name of this bone? Or I should say this bony landmark. Go on, guys, in the chat box. How quick are you? Who's going to be the first one? Ooh, yes. Yes, Donna. Yes, guys. Oh, well done. Nice. Okay. Yes, the spine of the scapula. Now, I'm so inferior to all of you, you clever people. So I'd be underneath you, right? So this is your infraspinatus. And I'm going to pop the infraspinatus on. Here he is, infraspinatus. I'm going to pop him on my shoulder model. Then you've also got the supraspinatus. Really easy. Super, you're so above me. Oh my goodness. Supraspinatus is above the spine. So infraspinatus, supraspinatus. I don't have a great memory cue for this one. It's got a really lame name, I think, is the teres minor. The teres minor. And I always want to say it in an Essex accent. Teres minor for some reason. But yeah, you've got these three. Now, go back to the slides. What is significant about these three? They are grouped up as your what? You can see it on the slide. Just go for it. Type it for me. Who's going to be first? They're your rotator cuff. No, stay on the same slide. Yes, they're your external rotators. Externals, yes. They do this. Thanks, guys. Thank you for engaging with me. They take you externally. And the only one, all by himself, of the rotator cuff that does internal is subscapularis. Now, oh God, let me just see if I can position him nicely for you guys. There we go. Now, if I had to have laser vision and I could look through your body, and I could look all the way through your ribs and I could pop out of your back and I could see your scapula, I would see your subscapularis, okay? So if I had to get my skeleton, that's a nice way of seeing it. Subscapularis is inside here. So as I lift my arm up, there's subscapularis, okay? He, all by himself, is a lonely little internal rotator. Now you might be thinking, so hang on, isn't there a biological discrepancy? Like we've got 3 external rotators and only 1 internal rotator. Well, unfortunately, it's the opposite way. If you go to the next slide for me, you're going to see that actually we have 4 massive internal rotator muscles, huge ones. Subscapularis is great, is a big fat muscle. Pectoralis major, guys, put your hand like this on your chest, grab hold with your hand onto your humerus. This is another internal rotator. We mentioned teres minor, remember the one that I want to say in an Essex accent. His big brother, teres major, another internal rotator. And one of the biggest muscles in your body, the latissimus dorsi. Stroke yourself like this. I always joke and go, you know when people do this, you give yourself a little loving. Those are your huge latissimus dorsi muscles. And these are all internal rotators. Now you might be thinking, so, okay, that means that there's this huge biological discrepancy to internal rotation. Okay, so what? Well, let's have a little chat together. What happens day to day in our movements? I kind of gave you a little rundown of it earlier. What do we do with our day? Are we typing? Is this internal or external? We're sitting on the computer, we're internally rotated. Check me out while I drink. Internal rotation. While I chop my dinner up. Internal rotation. It's just internal rotation all day long, Mary Rhodes, and you're absolutely right. So much internal rotation, guys. If you had to think, if we were living out in nature, of course we would do a bit more internal rotation. That's why we have these muscles. But if we were living out in nature, we would also rip roots out of the ground. We would do this action and throw things. We would climb trees and pick things, and our arms would go into this shape a whole lot more. And also we'd probably do it through more load. Now you might be like, okay, so what? Again, like I do yoga. Yoga's the answer. But is yoga the answer? Yoga, unfortunately, as Victoria very said, and Amy, unfortunately, yoga does what, guys? What do we do more of in yoga? Internal, external. We do binds. You guys are writing to me. We do push, push, push. We're going to get to that later. We do internal, internal, internal. Let's quickly run through some things. Prayer position, internal. Reverse prayer, Internal, we do bird of paradise, Parshvakonasana, revolving Parshvakonasana. It's all internal with so much internal rotation. Interlace fingers behind your back. Guys, we're doing so much internal rotation. Now, I just want to put a quick disclaimer out there. Internal rotation is not a problem. It is not a problem. You can do internal rotation. You must do internal rotation. And even in your practice, it's nice. You can massage out your anterior capsule. Sometimes that gets a bit sticky. Loads of good things, right? The problem is we're doing too much of the same thing over and over and over. And I can see some of you guys are like, yeah, downward dog. You are doing a little bit of external rotation. But the thing is, we're not getting through range and we're never taking it through load. Does that make sense? Compared to our internal rotation ranges, we're not expressing it. Some of you guys are like, yeah, okay, let me feel this. You're so cute. Yes, Kristen, you're just like, yeah, let me feel this. And guys, I just want to reinforce again, I'm going to say it one more time. There's no problem with doing internal rotation. There's not a problem with doing binds. If you do it well and you've got serratus active, it's all good. The problem is we're just doing so much of it. So what happens? Well, let's do a little assessment. Stand up with me. Stand up and just kind of close your eyes and just stand relaxed. Imagine you're hungover. Maybe you are hungover. Just close your eyes and just stand relaxed. I mean, almost like old grandpa posture. And then I just want you to open your eyes and look straight down to where your thumbs are pointing. Like, what is going on with those thumbs? And I want you to notice if they're turning inwards, that means you probably have your internal rotators firing a whole lot. Or if they're pointing forwards, they might mean there's more balance between your internal and your external rotators. Now come back to the screen. I want you to see this. And you know what is always so tricky about teaching anatomy with these models is the head of the humerus is fixed. But what I want you guys to understand is if you've got a biological, a habitual, a practical discrepancy, the head of the humerus doesn't sit in the middle. Can you see, if I do this with my model, can you see how there's all this space here? Now guys, it's not empty space in your body. There's loads of structures going through here. But if I have a discrepancy, the head of the humerus doesn't sit in the middle. It starts to migrate forwards. It starts to do weird things like migrate upwards. And the problem is that we have lots of little structures that are running through here. I mentioned, let me run through them quickly. You can maybe jot them down if you're like a super geek and you like looking this stuff up. One is called a bursa, B-U-R-S-A. Bursa is like a little cushion. And it's meant to make things glide and be smooth. But if it's getting squished all the time, it's going to probably end up irritated. We have the rotator cuff tendon, and we've got supraspinatus tendon that comes up here. Again, it's a tendon. It's like a fraying rope. We've got that biceps tendon we spoke about earlier. All of these things, give me your bicep like this for a second. Take your other hand and pinch yourself like 20 times hard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then look at that dot and be like, ow, that's bloody sore. If you pinched yourself hard 20 times, imagine every single day of your life, you always have the head of the humerus migrating forwards. It's always forward. And now I go and I get teacups. And then I do yoga. And then I'm in downward dog. Can you see how that migration of the head of the humerus is going to cause problems with the little soft structures that lie underneath the acromion and inside of the coracoid process? All those little soft structures get squished. So of course, we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I'm going to give you guys a task. And the task is not for me to kind of go in and make sure every single one of you have done it right. The task is to get you to brainstorm. And I'm going to put you in groups so you can brainstorm as a collective. You can feed off each other's energy. How can we bring more external rotation into our yoga classes? So maybe if you're not sure about this task, let's have a little write down. Have a little write down exactly what the task is so you don't get confused. How can we bring more external rotation? How can I be really creative? How can I move my arms in a different way? How can I challenge external rotation in my body when I'm on the mat for myself or for my students? just so that we don't end up one of those teachers or one of those practitioners that's always doing the same old thing because tradition has told us that that's the right thing to do. So what I'd also like you guys to do is when you're in there, nominate a speaker. So when we come back and share each other's ideas, you know, whoever gets to speak out can maybe put their hand up. Maybe person who's figured out how to do that can be the nominated person. I'm going to try and get to as many of you as I can. If you've got something really amazing you want to share and you're like, I didn't have time, don't worry, because all you're going to get, all you have to do is give me a little email. I'm going to put it in the document that I'm going to send you next week. Okay. So while you guys are in groups, I'm going to read some of the questions, and then when we come back, I'll make sure I address those as well. Are we ready? Yarden, send them away. Let's hope this works, hey? And guys, don't just do wall stretches, because I know those feel good, but it's not taking you through range. Okay, you need through range, you need a little bit of load. Otherwise, you're just stretching passively, not doing anything. So think a little bit outside the box of what we normally would do. Let's see. Okay, so just click the join breakout room, please. Hey, we're all back. So guys, one of the things that I was reading in the chat box is people were like, okay, so like, what do we do about it? And that's why I wanted you to go into the groups. I wanted you to have the experience of being put in a situation where instead of, this is what I'm finding as I'm teaching anatomy a lot all the time, is I'm finding people write to me with questions like, well, how do I fix that? Well, how do I activate? And what I really want to empower you guys with is that there are so many answers out there. Once you understand the biomechanics, like I do too much internal rotation, really make an effort to then do research, external rotation exercises, external rotation through load, like try and really challenge your brain. I always use this, the terminology, make your brain sweat, to try and figure out how can you be a yoga teacher or a practitioner that really brings a lot more variety to the way your body is being used all the time. So with that being said, I'd love to have a little go. Someone's raised their hand. Oh my God, I love you guys. Okay, now I'm just going to figure out how to work that. Okay, so Katerina, are you willing to share? Are you willing to share? I'm going to put you up. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Hello, beautiful.
Hello.
Make sure you're unmuted, darling. Hi.
Yeah, hi. We thought of lots of fun stuff. Basically, anything where we were doing a big external rotation in this movement. So we talked about it happening, on your belly in locust, lifting like this, depressing the shoulder blades and retracting them, and external rotation of the arms. You can do that same kind of thing in Anjaneyasana or high lunge.
Yeah, beautiful.
Reverse tables, lifts, things like that. Same thing.
So you can do reverse table internally as well, okay?
Yeah,
so you'd have to cue which way to go. And I think cueing, guys, can I just quickly cut you off, my babes? I'm just going to say one thing while I remember. Those of you who are working on getting your cueing sharper, guys, it's hard, right? Because people maybe they meet you for the first time. They don't know what you're saying. But something that I found helps me with my students is this little crease here. Pop your hand on a table or the floor. And if you tell people, turn the crease of the elbow, it usually gives people a little bit of a reference point. Now, it's not foolproof. Sometimes people still get confused, but maybe that's one little strategy that might work for you guys as well. Go on, Katrina. What else have you got, my darling?
Okay, so exactly like that kind of cue of external rotation. We talked about planks where we shift the rotation of the arms out, even chaturangas where we shift the arms into external rotation. And then we talked a little bit about using like straps and things like that also, like where you could add resistance. What else did we say? Oh yeah, a fun one was the teacup exercise someone mentioned. So like whether a block or a cup or whatever, a ball, and just kind of playing with the more ranges of motion that we have without trying to drop it.
So this one also, again, will bring you into a bit of internal rotation, but that's not a bad thing. You're doing it actively. You're working a lot of external rotation. If you're holding a weight, especially, that's going to be with load. Katrina, you angel. Thank you so much for sharing. I want to talk to one more person. So I'm going to switch now to Alex, I think it's Alex. Are you ready, my love? I'm going to spotlight you right now. Hey, dude. Oh, can you share this one? Was it you?
Yes, yes. I think what
Yeah,
we
okay.
talked about Katrina and her group. We also talked about controlled articular rotations, be it by themselves or with a strap to give
Can
you
you
that.
explain what that is? Alex,
So,
sorry to cut you off, love. Can you explain what a controlled articular rotation? I'm going to type it into the chat box. You guys need to look this up. You explain it.
So it's basically just having your shoulders engaged and just, I mean, the best that I can explain it, I suppose, and you'll be much better explaining than me, but it's just making sure that as you go up and round and towards the back, you're doing it slowly, closely, and just being mindful of where your arms are all the way along.
And also, you're going into full range of motion with activation. Those two things, guys, full range of motion with activation, because you can go into full range of motion passively just against a wall. You're not building any neuromuscular connections there. But if you had to do it just with your strength, or if you had to hold a weight, that would be mega. Go on, yeah. Alex. Sorry to interrupt you, my love.
Somebody mentioned shoulder flossing as well. We talked about that as well, just whether or not but I suppose that's something that came up. And we talked about shoulder warrior flossing. Poses.
1 second, my love. Sorry to interrupt you again. What? Shoulder flossing, guys, is more for the nerves. I'll include that in another workshop because that's super detailed. So shoulder flossing, you can do external rotation with shoulder flossing, but I think that's more for nerves. Okay, so just don't get confused. Your controlled articular rotations are more just full range of motion with all of your strength. Please continue, Alex. What else did you guys come up with?
We spoke about being in planks, dolphin poses, and having a block in between sort of your elbow, so when you're in, and then pushing up. And child's pose also, just being more mindful about where your shoulder positioning is and engaging the right parts of your shoulder as you want. And I think the one that we were talking about when you sort of came in was something that we like to do in the studio where I practice, and we call it in Phoenix, where we start in your sort of standard, sort of you're folding forward, and then you bring a bit of bend to your knees, and then as you rise up like a phoenix.
Do you guys want to try it with us?
Full range of motion, and then
so it's kind of like cars again, the controlled articular rotation. It's kind of similar, but it's what I like about this one is it's also getting the shoulder blades involved. You know, yeah, that scapulothoracic junction is getting a little bit of lubrication. Thank you, my darling.
Thanks.
You were so great. I really appreciate you putting your hand up. Thank you, Sasha. I'm going to give you a chance to quickly chat, and then that will be our last person to share. So I'm just going to sorry, I'm just clicking into your spotlight now. Hello, darling.
Hi,
how are you?
Good, thank you.
Very good. Have you got anything you want to share that maybe hasn't been touched upon?
Yeah, we mainly talked through poses. So we had upward bow. So when you're lying on your front with your hand on the inside of your ankle so that it's externally rotated.
So that's really good. Can I cut you off just really quick, my love? Is this active or passive? Jump into the chat box, all you peoples. Yeah, passive. But passive is not bad. It's just, again, if we're only doing passive all the time, that's when it becomes a problem. Sure. Go on, Sash.
And then things like wild thing and side plank.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Carry on. That was good. Yeah. Wild thing, side plank.
Wild thing, side plank. And then we had triangle, revolve triangle, dancer, but I guess that would also be passive. And then is there a difference between yin and yang? I suppose they're also passive.
Yeah, that's the problem. Well? Yeah, so guys, if you follow me, you know that I'm a real advocate for, of course, you can do yin. I'm sure there's amazing yin teachers out there. And I think that, you know, there's so many benefits of the practice. But what we have to appreciate about yin is that it is passive, right? Now, if you had a gym membership and you were lifting and you were taking yourself through your controlled articular rotations, and instead of just always being in passive, yoga, you also did active, where you don't use any kind of support, but you actually use your muscles to hold the shape of the body. Great, you know, go to a yin class once in a while. But what's happening is people are so passive in their bodies every day, and then they go to a yin class. Can you see how that is maybe not lending itself to what our bodies developed as in nature? So always when you think of a shoulder issue, a hip issue, any joint issue, any injury, think, what is this person or me doing every day? And does it mimic what my body's evolved for? We haven't evolved to be still. We'd get eaten. So stillness these days is helpful psychosomatically, but physically people are suffering because they aren't moving enough through range. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Guy, is there anything else you wanted to say, Sasha, just before I kind of lower your hand?
No, thank you. That's great. The description of passive was really useful. Thank you.
Awesome, guys. Can I just give you guys, you can just type Y into the chat box. Do you guys all understand passive versus active? Yeah, we got lots of yeses. Let me just see if there's any. Usually I wreck my shoulder taking a shower and washing my back. And we're going to talk about why that is, okay? There's still a lot of content to come, guys. I know you had a little bit of time on your own thinking and now sharing, but there is a lot still to come. So guys, again, I'm just going to quickly grab this to show you. If I had to do resistance training, just me standing with this weight is already me using opposing muscles than what I always do. Okay, so you can be like, oh yeah, I use my bag, but again, what do humans do? I always carry my bag on the same side and I go passive. Look how passive I am. The weight is dragging my shoulder into distraction. I need to use my muscles to go up against gravity. Just like if you saw someone in a plank position and they were just hanging in their bodies like this, you would obviously know that that's not going to do their shoulders any favors because you're hanging in those ligaments. What I need you guys to always remember is that ligaments are structures that once they overstretch, they don't recoil. They become long and thin and sloppy. And if you don't have that myofascia, the strong muscles, to hold it all together on top of that soggy ligament, it's going to really end up with a lot of issues. Just before we watch the little video that I've got planned for you guys, I just wanted to jump in and give you guys a few examples. Write these down if you don't know them. The one that I really love, we're going to practice this all together later as well, is putting an elbow under your block and then a block under your elbow rather, and then holding onto the other block with your hand and then lifting the block up and down like this. Whenever I teach my flow therapy workshop, I get people to do this and I tell you guys 15 reps with a block and people are dying. You can also hold on to, you can also use stretchy bands. So you can actually hold a stretchy band, tie it to a door frame, and you can actually go into external rotation. And I really feel like at the moment, knowledge in terms of research is coming out as saying, guys, we shouldn't just be isolating individual muscles because it's not really how your body works. And I would say absolutely that's true. But speaking from experience, someone who had a lot of shoulder issues from not having this balance between internal and external, is for me to suddenly know how to activate those muscles was very, very hard. So what I did is I took a very light strap, tied it around a door, and I was literally like shaking as I did my external rotation. But the good thing is what it did is it started to build that neuromuscular junction. And I started to become more and more aware of those muscles. And then when I went to actually hold a heavy weight, put my bag on my shoulder, lift a bar overhead, get into my yoga practice, I had a little bit more of an understanding as to how to activate those muscles. So those little rehab exercises, I know there's a lot of literature saying they kind of null and void, but if you're working with someone very weak, they can be incredibly helpful. So let's quickly watch the next video that I have for you guys lined up, just so you guys can again dive in and look at all the little pieces of the puzzle.
They help hold the shoulder in place and keep it from dislocating. Ligaments attach the clavicle to the acromion in the AC joint. Two ligaments connect the clavicle to the scapula by attaching to the coracoid process, a bony knob that sticks out of the scapula in the front of the shoulder. A special type of ligament forms a unique structure inside the shoulder called the labrum. The labrum is attached almost completely around the edge of the glenoid. When viewed in cross-section, the labrum is wedge-shaped. The wedge shape and the way the labrum is attached create an elevated rim around the glenoid socket. This is important because the glenoid socket is so flat and shallow that the ball of the humerus does not fit tightly. The labrum creates a deeper cup for the ball of the humerus to fit into. The labrum is also where the biceps tendon attaches to the glenoid. Tendons are much like ligaments, except that tendons attach muscles to bones. Muscles move the bones by pulling on the tendons. The biceps tendon runs from the biceps muscle across the front of the shoulder to the glenoid. At the very top of the glenoid, the biceps tendon attaches to the bone and actually becomes part of the labrum. This connection can be a source of problems when the biceps tendon is damaged and pulls away from its attachment to the glenoid. 4 tendons connect the deepest layer of muscles, the rotator cuff muscles, to the humerus. Just before these muscles attach to the upper end of the humerus, they join together to form a single tendon called the rotator cuff. The rotator cuff muscles lie just outside the shoulder joint. These muscles help raise the arm from the side and rotate the shoulder in many directions. The rotator cuff muscles and tendons also help keep the shoulder joint stable by contracting and holding the humeral head tightly in the glenoid socket as the humerus moves. The large deltoid muscle forms the outer layer of shoulder muscle. The deltoid is the largest, strongest muscle of the shoulder. The deltoid muscle provides the power to lift the arm once the arm is away from the side.
So, guys, I'm just quickly scrolling through some of the comments that came through. Just in case anyone gets confused with all this chat, I'm going to do a really brief recap. Everybody stand like a 1980s Barbie doll. Whenever this bone, this long arm bone, rotates inwards, it's internal rotation. And every time it goes out, it's external. And put your arms straight. And if you turn your thumbs in, that's your internal rotation, external rotation. And someone wrote, does that mean I need to drink with external rotation? Guys, of course not. Internal rotation is fine. You're supposed to do internal rotation. You're not supposed to change every single activity that you do. I just want you to bring a bit more balance into your lifestyle, into your daily routine. And I wanted you to have that brainstorming session to really challenge your thinking. Like, if I bind, do I need to bind? Because I've been internal all day. Maybe that's not the most appropriate thing for my body. And someone wrote, oh, but isn't binds one internal, one external? Let's actually do a bind and assess that together. So let's just do like a little lungey lunge for me. Yeah, give me your sexy lunges. Give me an internal rotation on the one arm and an internal rotation on the other arm, and then bind. There's only one bind that has one internal, one external, and that is your cow face Gomukhasana. So if you do this for me, one internal, one external, and then you reach your hands back behind you and you connect your fingers, the arm that is, which arm is internal right now? Jump into the chat box and let me know. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. We've got our bottom one, which is internal rotation. Really nice to see that some of you guys do activities like rock climbing to counterbalance all the pushing that we do in yoga. That's really nice to see. We do too many chaturangas. We'll talk about that later. I think because you haven't. Okay, cool. So guys, I'm going to now move on to the next section just because I'm really mindful of time and I want to kind of stay on track as much as possible. We're now going to move on to the next slide, which is called shoulder stability. Yeah, next one, exactly. And what we need to understand about our body is very, very clever, and it follows this alternating pattern. Those of you who follow me know I've spoken about this many, many times. We follow this alternating pattern between like mobility on one end, the next section is stability, then we need mobility again, then we need stability. And that literally runs throughout your whole body. And it's so clever because imagine a trampoline and the whole thing was made of springs. We wouldn't go anywhere. Or imagine the whole thing was made of steel. We wouldn't get any bounce. What makes a trampoline effective is that some of it is stable and some of it is mobile. So if you had to guess, go on in the chat box for me now. Tell me, what is the scapulothoracic joint, where your shoulder blade lives on your thorax? What do we want? Do we want mobility or stability? Yeah, babies, you guys have got it. Yes. Okay, yeah, we need stability, guys. You are bang on. We need stability there. And that is really important because the glenohumeral joint, what does that need? What does that need? This joint here, do we want mobility or stability here? Yeah, we need movement. Because think about it, if you're reaching up for fruit from the trees, if you're stiff and you're like, oh, you're not going to be able to get food. So this is a very important joint to have mobile. But if the scapula isn't living nicely on your body, what's going to happen is this joint will suffer. And I'm going to show you exactly why that is in a moment. But what I quickly want to show you as well, oh yeah, before I do that. So remember earlier, I said with the rotator cuff, if we have these muscles that are imbalanced, we've been doing so much internal rotation and the head of the humerus is now not living in the middle anymore. It's kind of slopping forwards. That's going to cause impingement. All those little soft structures get squished by this bone. Well, the opposite can happen as well. Instead of this bone being the problem, the shoulder blade is the problem. Because if the shoulder blade isn't stable and it now starts living like this, anytime the arm moves, it's not going to be able to have the space that it needs to keep those little soft structures that are underneath the subacromial space safe. So we need to start activating our stability. Now, you guys tell me, what is the most important stability muscle in the shoulders? One of the most important muscles in the whole body. Can you remember the name? Yes, guys, you guys are so on it. I love you guys. You're like serratus anterior. Yarden, go back to the slides for me. I want people to see this muscle. Guys, drag me to the right so that the picture of the slide gets bigger. And I want you to look at serratus anterior. I mean, this muscle is mega. Okay, it's going to come soon. I think Yarden's playing around with the tech. But basically, this muscle is so big. There are upper fibers, mid fibers, and lower fibers. And they really help to keep your scapula on your back. I'm going to show you again what it looks like. Look how big it is, guys. It's absolutely massive. Now, what often happens to people when their shoulders are weak is this. Their scapula is weak, and so their scapula starts pinging off of the rib cage like this. It's called winging of the scapula. And that winging, again, is what I showed you here. I'm going to show you with the skeleton. So serratus is meant to keep shoulder blade flat. Serratus switches off. So shoulder blade wings off, just like I showed you. This inner border pops off. Now the scapula, instead of being here so that my arm has space to move, now the scapula lives here. Now my arm doesn't have space to move. Do you see how that's again going to cause issues with the soft tissue structures underneath the subacromial space? It's a bit like, and I brought my little coat hanger to show you. So here's the jacket hanging on the coat hanger. If my serratus is firing, my shoulders will follow a really nice position so that the jacket stays nicely on the person. But if serratus gets weak, what ends up happening is this. Then the sleeve of the shoulder is going to fall. In fact, I might even exaggerate it a bit more and move the bend even closer to the collarbone. So instead of the shoulder living, I'm going to show you on my body, living in this position, my serratus is now turned on, serratus turns off. Can you see how it's sloped down? Now that acromion is lying forwards. Now, every time, if you guys do this for me, slope your shoulders, give me slopey shoulders, and try and lift your arm up. Try and lift your arms up as high as you can. Isn't that harder? Can you get your arms up? It's really tricky, and people do this thousands and thousands of times. So it really, really disrupts their shoulders. And like I said, there are 3 levels. There are upper, mid, and lower fibers, and how you activate them is quite different. We're going to have a little go at this when we do the class, but I just want to kind of quiz you guys a bit. Get ready to go into the chat box. If I had my arms straight in front of my plank, right? I'm on plank now, my hands are on my yoga mat, I'm looking down at my mat, and I was going to shrug my shoulders like this. Which fibers would I activate? My upper, mid, or lower fibers? Have a little guess. Mid, mid, mid. mid, upper. I love that you guys are guessing. Can I just say how proud I am of you guys, even if you're risking being wrong and you're just getting in the chat box, and that is how you learn. So thank you for just getting in there. That is the best you can do. So let's think about it. Let me show you. Here's my skeleton. Boom. I got my upper, mid, and lower fibers. If I'm traveling in this direction, it's going to be my mid fibers, right? Now let me put me in downward dog. Here's a trick question. And I'm going to start sliding my scapula this way. Which fibers are going to get active? All upper, upper, upper. This is why I always ask this question. It is a really confusing one, my loves. Lift your arms up. Go on, lift your arms up. I can see you. You're like, I don't want to. I can't. And I want you to glide your shoulder blades up and down and up and down. Now, yeah, some of you guys are starting to get it. It's actually your lower fibers that are helping your scapula to go into a neat position on your rib cage. And it's the opposite. Put your hands down by your side. If you're sitting on the floor, I'm sitting on a little stool, but you can do this if you're sitting on the floor. Put your hands beside you and push down until your bum lifts up off the ground. Push down until your butt lifts up off the ground. Now, which fibers? Which fibers? Yes. So it's opposite to how you think. It's the upper fibers now. It's opposite to how you think. And I always want to explain that, because when we go to actually doing a little bit of movement in a minute, I want you to really feel, oh, okay, I get it. Upper, mid, lower fibers. Lower fibers here, mid fibers here, and upper fibers here. So do that with me. Stick your arm out. Lift your arm up. Put your hand underneath your armpit here. Feel the lower portion of your scapula and drag it forward and down like this. So you have to do a little bit of external rotation and elevate. Those are your lower fibers elevating, helping your shoulder blade be stable as you go into this position. Now put your hand a little closer to the armpit as your hand comes forward and push. You'll feel your pec underneath your palm. That's fine. Know that your mid fibers here are activating as well. And then a little bit of the upper fibers when the arm is down as you push the floor away and lift your body up against gravity. Now, obviously, the body isn't that mechanistic. It's not like I'm going to slice you up into little puzzle pieces, and every time you lift your arms over your head, just this muscle on its own is going to work. It's not how it is. Obviously, the other fibers are getting involved, but I want you to understand that the greater load is being transferred closer and lower towards the lower portion of the scapula. Now, what could affect the health of your serratus? Obviously, it can be weak, so we need to strengthen it. But what could else make it not function that well? Any ideas? Any ideas? What else? If it could be weak, obviously then it's not working. Other muscles can start taking over. You guys are like pecs, breast, not breathing properly. Yeah, exactly. Tightness. Okay, amazing. And a lot of you guys are onto me. You already know tight pec. So give me your arm like this and take your other hand like a claw and hook your fingers underneath your pec, like really give it a little jiggle, and then put your thumb on the top portion of your pec and massage and feel those trigger points that are in the pec. Now, what do we do a lot in our yoga practice that's going to get these muscles overworked? You know the answer. Go on, type it in for me. Chaturanga, 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 chaturanga. And some classes you go to, that is how they build heat. Now, guys, chaturanga is not the villain. Chaturanga is a good position. We should practice it. The problem is again, the scales are tipped. We're doing so much of it that we're actually forgetting that we need to start working other movement positions. And so what's happening is, I'm going to show you on my skelly. So you realize, I've got scapular winging. My shoulder blades are living like this. Probably that's why my shoulders feel crap all the time. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and I'm going to start working my serratus. And you do serratus, serratus, serratus. But what you haven't addressed is just how much you've been doing chaturanga. So you're strengthening this muscle, but you've been doing more chaturanga and you've been doing more pushing actions with that pec of yours than anything else. Do you remember the name of this little bone here? This little bone here. Do you remember the name? I'm going to show you here. Coracoid. Yes, guys, the coracoid process. So we have two pec muscles, pec major and pec minor. So with me, take one hand, wrap it around. This is pec major we're going to mimic now. Pec major, big fat muscle here, connects here onto the arm, internal rotator. But we also have a little one. Make your hand like smaller, like a little paddle, and put your hand onto the coracoid process like this. This guy also gets tight. Now I'm going to show you on Skelly again. Here we go. I've been strengthening my serratus, but it's not doing anything. Look, my scapula is so unstable. I've got a lot of shoulder pain. That's because your pec minor that's attaching here is actually pulling it forwards. So of course, strengthening is super, super duper important. We have to do it, but it's not going to be enough if we don't release what's overworked and balance our activities. That's just something to think about. Yeah, we need to stretch out. What about a bit of massage, a bit of getting a bit more blood flow and hydration into those tissues that are so overworked? Rolling, nice one, you guys. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. That's so, so good. What else? So we've spoken about muscles, okay? Yes, you guys are right about muscles, but what else could get serratus not firing? This is a trick question. I want you to think carefully. What else could get this guy not working? Think about its connection points. Yarden, maybe go back to the slide. You guys are going to see the answer, but it's okay. Yeah, posture. But what? Yes. Oh my God, you guys are so good. Flaring ribs, Jenny, and the posture, guys. It's there. Flat thoracic spine. You can go back to me now, Yarden. The armpit massage. Sorry, better description. Was the best pec massage release. Oh, I'm sure there's many others, like a ball here, and you can release this like that. Definitely Google that, my loves, and we'll do a couple ourselves here as well when we do the movement. But yes, if your spine, I mean, think about it like this. Here is where serratus originates, right? On your ribs. It's the starting point of the muscle. It goes underneath your scapula, and it connects to this inner border. Now, remember the shape. Your rib cage is like a convex shape. It's like round. You can even give yourself that little loving now. Feel how round the ribs are. And remember the shape of your scapula. It's also got that same puzzle piece. It fits absolutely perfectly on that shape. But if this portion of your back gets really, really flat, this guy hasn't got any bone structure to hang on to. So he starts to go really, I'm just going to plug in my battery. Give me a second. There we go. So this guy doesn't have enough bone structure to hang on to. The other thing, which there's one more. Can you guys think of one more for me? It's also to do with the thoracic spine. We've spoken about it being flat. What's another thing that can happen to the thoracic spine that makes the shoulders not, you're on the, too round and too stiff, lack of mobility. What is the main movement job of our thoracic spine? What does it want to do? What is its born? It's, yes, twisting, rotation. You guys are so on it. My God, you don't need me. You don't need me. Your spine does this. Now, what movement do you think we do more than any other in our day where we need this twisting? What movement do we do more than any other where this twisting is required? Yes. We need, oh, you're so cute, Sasha. Sasha's like this. Exactly. We do walking. So I want you to stand up. I know that we can't all walk around now, but if you just swing like this is called reciprocal movement. As one arm goes forward, the opposite leg goes forward. But if I don't have that rotation, but I still need reciprocal movement, what's going to happen to my shoulders? Yeah, we don't walk enough swagger. Yeah, we need a bit more like, Adele's like, maybe we should get a bit more of a sexy walk going on. If we don't have, yeah, we're going to start compensating. Exactly. So guys, watch me quickly. Come closer. I want you to watch. So here would be a natural movement, right? I've got my rotation. What do I want at the scapula? Do I want stability or mobility? You want stability, but that means the thoracic spine should be what? Stable or mobile? I hope you guys are all still with me. Yeah, Exactly. So I'm going to just repeat this for anyone who's a bit lost. Your thoracic spine, this midsection where the ribs are, it needs mobility, which means for me to get that reciprocal movement of a walk, I need the opposite hand to come forward from my thoracic spine, not from my arms doing everything. The same thing applies for, what's a good example? I'm going to use twisted prayer. You know when we do this, guys? You know when we do this one? This I see all the time. People are stiff in their thoracic spines. Now, like you said, the twist needs to come from the thoracic spine. But what do people do? Yeah, they don't actually use their spines at all. Look at my shoulder. And then they bind from here. They bind, and let me do it with this leg. I think it's, yeah, this one. I haven't bound in so long because I'm trying to work on my stability. But if I pull my body this way, try it. It's going to feel terrible, so don't do it for very long. Try and do a bind, opposite arm to leg. Ugh, I hate binding. And then move your body this way because you're stiff in your thoracic spine and you're lazy to use it. And I want you to feel what happens to the shoulder. So opposite arm to leg. So if your right leg is forward, it's the left arm that's going to hook over the top of it. You're going to feed it underneath. You can take the opposite arm around. Yes, Amy. Yes, Victoria. It's disgusting. But guys, I have a shoulder injury, so sitting this one out, no worries, my darling. But guys, this is why people end up hurting their shoulders in yoga. It's because we are desperate for the shape and we put that above function. And so what happens is we don't realize that we need to educate people. Guys, your thoracic spine is where you need mobility and not just passive, where the arm is doing everything for you. You need to work your active mobility. You need to do it with movements that mimic everyday life so that your shoulders aren't all gammy and floppy and taking all the load. So next thing we're going to do is a quick little class. Yarden's going to play us some music. Make sure your lights are on for the class. Yeah, guys, is that to me privately? Oh, my lights are on. Okay. Hopefully you can see me okay. We're going to do a quick little class. Grab your 2 blocks. Yeah, it is really dark today. I don't know why. Let me see if I move this light closer, if it helps. Maybe that's, oh, geez, that's just turned it off now for some reason. Okay, hopefully that helps, guys. So come to a wall space if you have one. If you don't, you can also do this face down on the floor. And the idea between us starting to figure out, how to activate our serratus anterior and get stability there, and just understand where we want to put our mobility and where we want to put our stability. So if you have a bit of wall space, you're going to face the wall. You're going to put your elbows closer and your hands further apart. And you're going to feel, am I getting sloppy in the rest of my body, or can I connect it? Once you've connected it, you're going to glide your arms up in a V, keeping your forearms on the wall. Oh my gosh, it's so hard. And then you're going to bring the elbows back down, and you're going to allow your shoulder blades to do upward rotation and downward rotation. Now, as I'm doing this, you guys can keep moving. I'm looking out for rib flare to compensate for the fact that I haven't got enough stability. The arm might snake up the wall as opposed to do a nice strong V line where it controls it down and in. And you don't have to be very far from the wall. You can be maybe a hand distance away from the wall with your heel of your hand in your belly and your fingertips on the wall. You can kind of mix it up really. The more variety, the better. Now that one's a super nice one, but I want to teach you one more, and it's again to do with the wall. And this one, you need to stand a little bit further back. You're almost going to do like a diagonal lean with your hands on the wall. And as you slide your hands up, you're going to lean into the wall. And as you slide your hands back into almost a plank shape, you're going to bring your body back to standing. Now the idea is to go as smoothly as possible, down and up. The idea is to press the floor, the wall away. So we're loading the serratus, and allow your scapula to do that upward rotation and elevation, upward rotation and downward. Bum sticking out to compensate. Physio gave me this for my AC progress inflammation. That's so good, Lisa. Well done, babe. That's it. So nice, Katrina. Well done. I'm just giving you guys a little eyeball right now. Really look out for your ribs flaring and your head looking up maybe too much. Keep it all in line and just focus on the shoulder blades doing the movements. Fab, guys. Last one. I want to now still use the wall, but we're going to turn our backs to face the wall. Now, my wall is pretty skinny. My bloody plant's in the way. But you know what? It's just to get the idea. The most important thing that the wall should give you is scapular feedback. So just relax your arms and kind of use the wall to feel where your shoulder blades are. If your serratus is weak, you'll feel that inner border of your scapula pushing against the wall, and you want to feel more that it's flat. Then I want you to bend your elbows up in line with your shoulders, and I want you to do what we call the robot. One hand is going to go up, one hand is going to try and go down. Now remember, if you're into shape, you might compensate the shoulders so the hand touches. I don't care about your shape. I care about your integrity. So get your shoulder blades flush onto the wall and try and internally rotate that bottom arm without letting it move. Now do the opposite. And I just want you to hold for a few seconds. Maybe you notice one arm has more mobility. Is it because you're sacrificing the stability where the shoulder blade touches? And then just keep switching between the two very slowly. This one is nice, guys, because remember the reciprocal movement I taught you about walking. Now we're training your shoulders to stay in place as you've got this reciprocal robot going. You guys look amazing. You're going to give me like a couple more of those. Think about what's happening in your ribs as you're doing that. Okay, cool. And then we're going to come to our mats. And we are going to do the mid fibers of our scapula, of our serratus. You're going to come into a plank. And you're going to let the shoulders just shrug to kiss each other and then push away. And you're trying to not let the head do too much movement. And you're trying to get your spine to stay fairly still. The movement is literally just the shoulder blades gliding. If you have an injury or if this feels really hard, I highly recommend you putting your knees on the ground. You're still going to get that mid-fiber serratus activation. Good, last one. Stay where you are. Lift your hips backwards into downward dog. And we're going to go over the yoga poses in a bit more detail later. For now, listen carefully. Push the floor away. Externally rotate by the crease of the elbows, rotating forwards as much as your body allows. And then I want you to glide the scapula. Remember that scapular-thoracic junction. Glide the shoulders up and down. Up to your cheekbones and down towards your tailbone. And just keep gliding and think of that lower portion of your serratus anterior taking the load. As your arm glides up and down, the lower portion of the serratus is working hard to pull the scapula flush onto your ribs. Shift the shoulders after the last one. When you're done, forward into plank. Point your toes and lower your hips into an upward facing dog. And here, do the same thing. Glide your shoulders down and up. And just feel that scapular-thoracic junction. We're now using a little more of the upper fibers of serratus. Squeeze your bum, make sure you're not letting it go soggy. Awesome, guys. Last two. Last one. Excellent. Now curl the toes under, lift your hips back into plank position, and then lower your knees down and get your blocks. And I want you to place your hands on your blocks. And we're going to just practice this with our knees first. You're going to not really move much around your spine or your belly or your head, but you're going to shift your left hand onto your yoga mat, but you're going to shrug the right shoulder to get there. Then you're going to take the right hand onto the floor beside your block. To go onto your blocks again, left hand moves first. Here you've got to use the serratus to press the floor away. Left hand on the block, press the floor away, right hand on the block. Now let's do the right side. Push, right hand comes down as you shrug the left. Left hand comes down. Right hand comes up as you press the floor away on the left. Left hand comes up. Let's try this from plank position. Let's start with the left hand moving first. Left, right, and really feel that shoulder shrug as you walk onto the blocks. Once you've done the one side, practice the same thing on the other side. Yeah, some of you are feeling that one side is a bit weaker. What would you cue to someone who can't feel the upward dog shoulder girdle? It's very common that people can't feel it, and I'm going to explain why in a second. Nice, guys. Okay, last one, when you've done both sides equally and you're like, okay, enough of this crazy things. I now want you to actually feel a little bit of work in the external rotation. So you're going to take one of your blocks and you're going to place it in the middle of your mat. You're going to take your downward dog, hands in front of the block. As you bend your elbows together at the same time, see if your arms can scoop up your block as you lift it up into down dog, and then place it down on the floor slowly. So this is really asking a lot of those external rotators, picking the block up and then placing it down. Now I could feel myself cheating as I did that. I flared out my ribs to make it easier. Can you keep the ribs in as you're doing it? Work up onto fingertips. You can do this from fingertips for sure. Arms should be totally straight if you can, yeah, because then we're isolating that scapulothoracic junction. Guys, I'm going to make you do just one more because that was mega hard. And then we're going to have a go at the one that we kind of brainstormed all together. Put one block under your elbow, grab hold of your other block. Remember, if you don't have blocks, it doesn't matter. You can get cans of beans or your favorite deodorant. And we're going to see if we can just do 5 repetitions into end range of external rotation. And as you do that external rotation, think about how the shoulder blade lives flat on the ribs. Think about the front ribs not flaring out. One more. And then we're going to switch to the other side. Glide your blocks across, elbow on block, hand on block. And give me 5. And which one has more range? And is it because it's stronger or is it too floppy? And when you've done the last repetition of that one, you can just slowly make your way all the way back. Okay, nice one, guys. I want to do one that I've taught before in class. And it's for really if you have no equipment. I really like this. You can sit on your knees and you can grab hold of the top of your mat. And I want you to hold the edge of the mat a bit like a tray. So your palms are up. You're grabbing it really stiffly. Elbows are going to want to go outwards. I want you to hug them in. And I want you to try and tear your mat apart. So you're trying to rip it in two by pulling your hands away from each other. Now, while you're doing this external rotation, close your eyes and try and imagine the shape of your shoulder blades on your back. Are they sticking out at all? Good. This is just an isometric hold, so don't worry about range right now. Now let go of your mat, move your hands about a hand distance away from where you were. Squeeze your elbows in again, and again, try and tear your mat in two. Now, a lot of times when I teach this, people say, oh, I feel the front of my shoulder. That's good. That's the tendon of your rotator cuff. And then lower the mat down, and again, move your hands right to the edge of your mat. So we've gone into as big a range as we can just using this mat. Elbows squeeze in. Hands are going to try and rip the mat apart. Really give it your all for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good. I want to do one more little exercise. I'm running a bit over, but I love this one. So next time you go to a picnic and maybe you're with your hypermobile friend, this is something that maybe you can help them with. Or if you're hypermobile, or even if you just feel you've got a weak serratus, this is a really, really nice exercise to practice. The reason why I use the example of a picnic is often when we sit like this on the grass, we'll hang in the shoulder. This totally means our musculature is off, which means we're hanging in our ligaments. We want to train the muscles to be on a little bit, just to give our joints support. So let's actually put the forearm down on the ground. And we'll start off with the fingertips facing the long side of your mat. Now you can do this with your knees or your feet. As you lower your hips down, shrug the shoulder up to the ear, to the position where you're hanging, and then drive down to lift your hips up. So as you go through this, I want you to focus on that serratus, taking you all the way down with control and bringing you back up. Now you're going to do 2 more as I flick through the screens. That's it. Okay, cool. Now we did it like this. Remember, we did an internal rotation. Can we, a little bit at a 45, move our hand a little higher? Maybe that will give you the opportunity then to feel a bit more external rotation along with your serratus, because you want the 2 to work together. So you can be on feet or knees. We're going to lower the hips with the shoulder poking up, and then you're going to drive it down. And you're going for 5 reps on your own. I want you to get that full range of the scapula going all the way down and all the way up. When you've done your 5th one, flip it to the other arm. Start off with the fingertips facing the long side of your mat. And then again, just do 5 reps, hips lowering, the shoulder shrugs, goes into like a crappy position, and then the shoulder drives down. Gone a bit blurry, there we go, I'm sharp again. When you've done your 5th repetition of that shoulder movement, remember it's not just the hips, the whole shoulder is moving. All the way up to your ear and down. 45 your arm, or maybe even all the way out if your shoulder can tolerate that, and then see if you can do it. Just trying to get my camera. Palms can be up or down. That's such a good question, Lisa, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Make sure you do your full 5 reps so you feel equal on both sides. All right, team. Slowly come back now, and the question was, palms up or down? And Yarden, I think that's the end of our class just because of time, so you can maybe just take the music off now, please. I always felt it in my lower back. Okay, we're going to talk about why. So palms facing up or down is a really, really good question. When I was working in pediatrics, the kids either came to us that were that had high level special needs, either very stiff kids, high tone, or very floppy kids. They didn't have any ability to sit up. And for my very floppy kids, to try and get them to have a bit more natural posture so they could play and interact with life, one of the little tips that can help them is turning the palms up. So when I'm teaching this one and I'm with a 1-2-1, I often would cue palm up, but some people find that's a little bit heavy on the bone of their elbow. So it's something you can play with. And if it feels comfortable for you, I highly recommend the palm up, because if you do this for me, just put your palms like that. After you've written, if you need to write, don't worry. Arms are down, turn your palms up, and I want you to just naturally feel the movement going into the upper body. Turn the palms down and really internally rotate, and see how the internal rotation and external rotation has a relationship to your thoracic spine as well. So yes, great question. Somebody asked, oh, can you do this in push-up? We are going to go over the yoga poses. So just give me a chance. We're going to get there. We are going to not get these exercises in the doc, actually. That's a really good question. Can you email me that? I've emailed, my email's right at the top of this chat box. That gets a little into my trap and neck muscles, more on my flexible side. Okay, so if your traps are overworked, we're going to talk about that a bit more later, but just know that if you're feeling something unnatural happen, that means serratus is not doing the work. It's so weak, it needs support from other muscles. So, are we ready to move on? Dun, 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 dun. I think we are a little bit over time, but not too bad. So I think it is time. Clicking shoulder, it's again instability. It means you need to work that muscle, but with less load. Feel like my scapula gets stuck and doesn't move past a certain point. Of course, because sometimes we've trained rigidity instead of stability. That is what we're going to talk about next. Next slide, please, Yarden. Okay, so here we're going to discuss something called scapular humeral rhythm. Yeah, 45 is hard because it's external rotation. You guys are still writing to me. I'm going to close the chat box so I can focus on you lot. So this one is like, I feel like this is why I was born, to educate as many people as I can, along with lots of other people that are talking about this. Because guys, tell me in the chat box quickly, what do people cue? Inhale, arms rise as the shoulders. What are they always telling us? Shoulders down, shoulders relax, shoulders down. Yes, thank you guys. Thank you for interacting with me. Guys, always you hear people cueing arms up, shoulders down. And I want to give you guys a little bit of science behind why this is not really effective for the shoulders. And the first thing I want to use to explain that is this thing called scapular humeral rhythm. Now, this is a fancy terminology. You don't have to remember it, but all it means is that we are, as physios, we would use this as a diagnostic tool to just assess what is going on with someone's shoulders. Let's say you come to me, you're like, I've got a really bad shoulder injury. One of the very first things I'm going to do is going to be like, okay, take your top off. Let me have a look at you. I get you to take your top off. I get you to turn around, and I stand back and I look at how your arms are moving along with your shoulders. Can you guys remember this glenoid fossa? What was a special feature about it? A good thing is it gives us lots of movement. And that's because it's what? That's because it's shallow. Exactamundo. So this very, very shallow socket, I'm going to use my hands to show you guys, is not like this. Okay, you have to understand, look at it here. I mean, it doesn't do it much justice, but it's just this little blue bit here. It's literally like this. Put your little finger like this. It's the best way of explaining it. Take your arm bone, your massive head of the humerus, and put it in that tiny little baby socket. And then what I want you to do is fixate the shoulder blade down and try and lift the arm up. You're not letting the shoulder blade move at all. You are just letting the arm move on its own. What's happening is something called distraction, which means that, remember earlier I said you can either have the head of the humerus sitting in a funny position, knocking against the acromion, or you can have the shoulder blade being in a funny position and the same thing happens. Well, that is what's happening here. Your shoulders are being fixed down as you are lifting your arms up. So the head of the humerus is constantly knocking into that acromion. Remember when we pinched our bicep? We only did 20 pinches. Imagine 10 years of yoga, always drawing your shoulder down as you lift your arm up. Now do this with me. Give me your baby socket again, your little finger. Give me your massive head of the humerus and put the two together. And I want that glenohumeral joint now to move as one. What if they moved together and it wasn't a big deal that your shoulders lifted up with your arm? Then look, the head of the humerus doesn't have to go anywhere different. It's just in the socket. And this is what people forget. What bone is this? I know it's called the glenoid fossa, but what bone actually is it? Exactly. Check the chat box, my loves. It's scapula. So now what you're asking me to do is move my scapula in a different way to my humerus. And the scapular humeral rhythm dictates this. This is what I look for as a physio when someone comes to me with problems. 30 degrees of abduction, there should be no change. There should be no movement difference. Beyond 30 degrees, we need the scapula to move in a comfortable, coordinated way along with your arm bone. And this just helps so many problems from occurring. I think the reason a lot of people have been teaching shoulders down is they see that people's shoulder blades are very weak. They see that scapular winging and they're like, oh, maybe if we tell them to hold their shoulder blade in place, that'll help. But I need you guys to understand the difference between this. Write this down. There is a difference between mobility. I apologize. There's a difference between stability and rigidity. And if you're always keeping your shoulder blade in the exact same place, you're not going to get stability. You're going to get rigidity. Now, remember what I said about this joint. It's not a true joint. It's called a false joint. It lives in a bed of what? It lives in a bed of muscles. Now you are going to stop your muscles from working by fixating them in place and just moving your arm on its own. It doesn't make sense, guys. Let's use another example. You decide, I need a cup of tea. Let me just turn this light box. Maybe we need a bit more light on me. Okay, I need to get my cup of tea. I'm like, okay, tea time. And I'm short, right? I'm only 5'1", and the teacup is always just out of reach. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get my teacup. But my teacher said, pull my shoulders down. Keep my shoulder down, try and get my teacup. I can't reach my teacup. What am I gonna do? I'll go on my tippy toes. I still can't reach my teacup. So what do people like me do? My shoulder didn't move, but I compensated with rib flare to try and give me a little bit more shoulder elevation. And I didn't even put it in my thoracic spine. I'm collapsing in my lumbar spine. Now my posture ends up like this. It's easier for me to lift my arm up and keep my shoulder blades down like my yoga teacher taught me to. So we are ruining the natural way that our bodies have evolved, okay? So let's say this, someone comes to you and you're someone who really cares about your students and you're noticing that your students come in like this. Hey teacher, I'm ready for my yoga. And you're like, no, hang on. Your shoulders, I mean, they're way up here, right? We know something's wrong if someone walks in like this. But where are my arm bones pointing? Up or down? Where are my arm bones pointing? Not my shoulders. No, arm bones. Where's my arm bone pointing? Down. My arms are down. Up, down, right? But where are my shoulders? My shoulders are up. So that, again, we haven't got scapular-humeral rhythm going on. The shoulders are up, but my arm is pointing down. It's not good mechanics. But the opposite is true. Now I'm going to fixate my shoulders down and lift my arms up. Can you see how this is also not right? Does that make sense? This, I agree with you, is not right. Shoulders should be down when the arm is down. But we also want to make sure that as the arms lift up, the shoulders move as well. And that brings me on to the whole chat about push versus pull. So I'm going to hang from a bar now, okay? You guys are going to tell me what to do. I'm looking at the answers coming in. I'm hanging from a bar. You better hurry because I want to do a pull-up. I need to do one pull-up. Tell me what to do. What's the first thing I need to do my pull-up? Go on. Tell me quickly, otherwise I'm going to fall off. Pull shoulders down. Yes, pull shoulders down, shoulders down. Now I'm above the bar. I did my pull-up. Pull up. Where are my shoulders going? Down. Where are my arm bones now pointing? Where are the arm bones pointing? Down. Exactly. Now I'm going into downward dog. It's the opposite. You have to use the opposing muscle groups. I'm going to do a quick little scan through because you guys are like, da, 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 da. Let's just see what has come in. So scapula, they have the ability to move up and down, guys. While you're sitting with me right now, lift your arms up with your shoulders up. Notice nothing happens. Soften the sides of the neck trap and engage your deep neck flexors. Oh yeah, exactly. And then arms down. And everyone's like, oh, but I'm crunching my neck. Guys, you're lifting your neck. You're lifting muscles around your neck, but you're not crunching your neck unless your neck is in a funny position. Your shoulders can move very independently of your neck. Why do people get tight upper traps? Why do they really get tight upper traps? Are they really lifting their arms up all day long? Yes. It's muscles called the deep neck flexors. Touch yourself here. It's obviously not here. It's right on your spine, but they're at the front. And as they contract, they pull your head back in space. If they're weak, which guys, let's be honest, most people's are quite weak, the upper traps have to do everything. We're going to go into that a little bit more. Now, if I do yoga with like this, my tight upper traps, guys, oh, I know what you need. You need to melt your shoulders down. Have we solved the problem? It's just reinforced the same problem because we haven't addressed what's really going on with this person. This person can use their upper traps. This person's upper traps are not overworked because they're lifting their arms up 50 times a day. Their arms are down. They're typing, they're texting, they're driving. They're not going up very often. Yes, if they were doing this all the time, we would address the whole mechanics, right? But most of the time, people have got weak, deep neck flexors. Their heads are in really funny positions. Okay, question here is, but arms could be up, scapula up with very tight upper traps. Some teachers want to be sure that the traps are not excessively contracted. And I think I just answered that question. Traps are not the traps are not the villain. The villain is the weakness in our posture. And we're going to talk about posture a little bit later. So I don't want to spend too long on this one because now I'm going to show you a video. Are pull-ups good to do then? Yes, very good. Go on, Yarden, you can play the video 3 for us. Last video for today, my love.
Scapulohumeral rhythm is the coordinated movement of the scapula across the thoracic cage, called scapulothoracic movement, together with the movement of the humerus to the glenoid or glenohumeral movement. Correct scapulohumeral rhythm is required to achieve full upper limb elevation. Scapular superior rotation upon the thorax tilts the glenoid fossa upwards. This change in its orientation accentuates the movement occurring at the glenohumeral joint. This coordinated movement occurs in a predictable fashion, and any disturbance to this pattern is evidence of a muscular or joint dysfunction. Generally, in the first 30 degrees of shoulder abduction, the scapula remains stationary against the rib cage, with the movement occurring only at the glenohumeral joint. As shoulder abduction continues, the inferior angle of the scapula begins to shift outwards as it undergoes superior rotation. On average, there is approximately 2 degrees of glenohumeral movement for every 1 degree of scapulothoracic movement from this point. This means that as the upper extremity moves on through abduction to 90 degrees, the glenohumeral joint contributes 40 degrees for a total of 70, while the scapulothoracic joint has only contributed 20. This ratio continues above 90 degrees, so that by the time the arm has been raised to 150 degrees, the contributions of each joint would be 110 for the glenohumeral and 40 for the scapulothoracic. The actual ratio can vary during different portions of the arc of elevation and can be different from individual to individual. Therefore, it's always important to compare the involved side with the uninvolved. The muscles primarily responsible for the scapulothoracic stability and motion are serratus anterior, rhomboids, levator scapula, and trapezius. To assess the scapulohumeral rhythm, the examiner observes from behind with the patient standing. The patient is asked to abduct the upper extremity in the scapular plane, which is approximately 30 degrees forward from the coronal plane. The examiner observes for the smooth and coordinated motion of the glenohumeral and scapulothoracic joints and compares this to the uninvolved side.
Okay, guys, can you do me a quick favor just to wake you guys all up? Just stand up really quickly wherever you are and just do a little shake out. Shake, 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 shake. Shake your body, shake your ribs, shake your head, shake your bum. Oh, bless. Now it's working. Yay! Awesome. Let's just do little squats on the spot. Lower your bum, squeeze your bum up, down, and up. Do some squats, down, and up. And up, just gonna get some blood flow from your brain into your butt. Because we're sitting so much, not good for us. Good. And then you're gonna jump it forward, jump it back. 2 more. 1 more. Awesome. Okay, now a little challenge for you. You're gonna jump to the back and then back to the laptop. Jump to the back, jump to the laptop, go the other way, jump to the back, jump to the laptop. Okay, a little challenge for you. 360, all the way around, go. 360 the other way. Awesome, you guys. Just do a little dance around for 10 seconds. Shake your arms up, let your scapula move with your arm. Oh my God, what a revelation. Shake your bum side to side. 3 more, 2, and 1. Last shaky out for 10 seconds. Shake. 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, guys, bring it back. We're gonna go on to the little check of the questions. I'm gonna have a quick check. Sorry that froze, my loves. Thank you so much for your patience. About 100 people have just written, "You're frozen." Okay, so we're gonna go over downward dog on its own. Yes, pull-ups are amazing to do. You're gonna understand why in the next slide. Indian dance, such a brilliant idea. I agree. Okay, next slide, Yarden, please. Oh, my heart has just gone up. Yeah, so we've gone from scapulohumeral rhythm now to this understanding of push versus pull. So I was doing my pull-up, drew my shoulders down to lift me up. And now the question comes to you guys. With our practice in our yoga, where are we leaning to? What are we doing more of? Are we doing any pulling ever? Yeah, you guys are like, push. Melody's like, push. You guys are so right. Our practice on the left involves us pushing. And guys, again, I don't want to vilify pushing. Pushing's a good thing. We should push, but it's not the full picture. Let's just quickly run through some pushing muscles. Put one arm out in front like this. Put the other hand on your chest. And as you push, feel your pectoral muscles here getting really nice and taut. And then take your hand and wrap it around to your tricep and feel your tricep. So these are the muscles you're going to be working again and again. The other muscles are being used, but not quite in the same way. Because now imagine you're grabbing something, pull it in towards you, feel your bicep, but also can you get the scapula to retract, a position that it's not going into through load very often, especially if you work at a desk or do yoga as your main activity of movement. Pull that scapula back to feel those pull muscles at the back. Now, if we have this muscular imbalance, again, it's going to impact how the bones are in the shoulder. The muscular imbalance is going to end up disrupting how the scapula lives on the thorax and even how the glenohumeral joint is positioned. So that's why pulling is so nice. It's such an important thing to bring into our regime. And, you know, for those of you who are like, I'm a mom, I have time for my yoga practice because I squeeze it in the middle, in the first thing in the morning before the kids wake up. I can't go to a gym, guys. I can't take up climbing or swimming. Well, what about getting some stretchy bands? And just before you set off to do your yoga practice, just do a few pulls with your stretchy bands. I'm going to do a video for you guys on YouTube actually about this. Just get your load going through your back body a bit more. And once you incorporate that pulling movement into your regime, I think you're going to find that the muscles just, they give you a much healthier position in your posture. And that's where we're going to go on to the next slide. I actually want you to take a look at the little man. Obviously there's me on the bottom left, but the little man on the top right, he's got a cross through him. Now do me a favor, give me your best artistic impression of that little man. Draw his head, draw his little giraffe neck. See if you can kind of draw his little hunched shoulders. And then once you've drawn him, I also want you to give me a little cross, through his shoulder area, just a cross like that. And on the top left, I want you to write at the top left, tight upper traps. On the top right-hand side, weak, deep neck flexors. On the top left, tight upper traps. On the right, weak, deep neck flexors. And we've spoken about that. We spoke about that when we were talking about scapulohumeral rhythm. People were like, but what about tight traps? I don't want them to get worse. That's true. But if we get someone's head to go back, and if you do that in your own body right now with me, you'll feel your shoulders actually don't need to work as hard. On the bottom two, let's go up with bottom left. We're going to have weak, mid to lower traps. And guys, that is your pull muscles, right? If you put one hand on your back, if you're a yogi, you've got the range to do this. Don't worry if you can't, but maybe if you just pull your shoulders back and feel these muscles working, and then imagine if that was done through load with like a weight. I'll show you, like this is what I like to do. One of these, or maybe you've got a stretchy band and you're practicing it like this, or you're sitting on your bum with your stretchy band, pulling it in a seated row. All of those are getting those weak, mid to lower traps to work. And then we want to release those tight pecs. And I promised you we'd do this earlier and I forgot, but let's do it now. Can you jump up and go to a wall? And I want you to position your fingers down to your elbow on the wall. You can also do it this way if you've only got a flat wall. And I want you to step forwards, allowing the arm to be behind the body. And as you go into that pec stretch, what often happens, and this happens when people do pull exercises as well, is they're like, whoa, my chair just fell over, 1 second. As they go into their pull exercises, just look at your screen for a second, they do this. I'm pulling, as opposed to getting that full retraction. So in your stretch, I want you to retract the shoulder with those pull muscles. Now take your crab claw, wrap it into your pec, and release your pec, especially where that coracoid process is, where the pec minor attaches. Can you get in there? Can you feel the trigger points? Yeah, doesn't that feel amazing? Well done, you guys, for doing this. It's so much easier to learn when your body's moving. It's a lot easier to absorb information. Let's try the other side now. Get your fingers all the way to your elbow up on the wall. Lean forward until you feel that stretchiness. Notice, is my shoulder collapsing out of habit? Can I give it that extra bit of external rotation and fix it? Right hand like your crab claw, grab your pec and have a little bit of a rummage in there. Feel, where do I have my trigger points? Can I find my coracoid process? And can I massage the whole pec minor? Can I feel the pec major all the way down to the armpit area? Nice one, you guys. And now come back. So now the pecs are a bit more open. Now give yourself some deep neck flexors. And feel how now the shoulders get a chance to relax. And imagine you've just done a massive pulling session. And I just want you to pull the shoulders back a little bit, just to kind of feel what those muscles would be doing if they were really used very often, they were under load. Can you feel how the shoulders pulling back kind of gives you posture? Now, remember what I said, if the posture goes too collapsed, like imagine I sit like this every day. Then I stand up and then I look at the internet. I'm like, oh my goodness. I have bad shoulders, and I read on the internet how to fix my shoulders. And I'm like, oh, you need to move your shoulders. I'm like, okay, I'll move my shoulders. All of those parts of that upper cross syndrome, that's what it's called, the upper cross syndrome, all those 4 points, if they're not corrected, now when you start doing movements, it's going to be very, very difficult for the shoulder to move in a healthy way. And of course, that has a repercussion to the next slide, which we're going to go on to next. And I know some of you are asking questions. We're going to take them in a minute, I promise. So if we go on to the next slide, it's about your breathing. So if you just sit with me and you hunch like this, and now try and take a deep breath in and breathe out and breathe in and breathe out. Where does the breath tend to go? For a lot of people, where do you feel the breath going? Can you breathe into your belly? What kind of thing are you feeling? Chest? Yeah. Chest? Yeah. Yeah, you like nose. Someone wrote nose. I love it. Guys, the breathing's up here. And so how would that affect shoulders? Well, often if someone comes to me with shoulder problems, the first thing I do is assess what is their breathing doing. Now, let's say, I'm like, it's obvious, their posture's the problem. And I'm like, okay, let's get you into a good posture and then let's assess your breathing. Maybe that will be the magic formula. People still will have a habitual breathing pattern. Maybe write that down. You, me, and everyone on the planet, if we've been breathing a certain way for a long, long, long time, our brain thinks, oh, that's how we're supposed to breathe. So what does it do? Well, a lot of you guys said it breathes up into the chest. But what are our primary breathing muscles? What muscles, if we had them working really effectively, would actually help us with our breathing? Yeah. Diaphragm, and there's one other, and intercostals. Okay, you guys got it. So your diaphragm and your intercostals should be moving. So if you guys put your one hand on your belly and you just take a very relaxed tummy, no ab activation, just breathe into a soft belly. And you keep breathing until your ribs expand as well. And then you breathe out. Those are the muscles that should be worked. But guys, when I look at people breathing, man, everyone is up here. And let's think about some of the muscles that get breath up here. Pecs, again. These muscles called sternocleidomastoids, if you turn your head in one direction and you grab hold of it, this muscle here that connects your collarbone to the back of your head, that guy gets very tight. Your lats, remember your lats are your internal rotators. So we end up a bit like this, right? And then you're asking someone to take a diaphragmatic breath. They don't know how. So they straight away just go back into their chest breathing. Now remember, all those muscles have got a relationship to the shoulder. And if they are overworked day after day, again, the shoulder mechanics are going to be disrupted. So what's the solution? Well, we need to teach people the posture that we've just run over, shoulders a little bit back and down, make sure that's through load so that it's a natural back and down. Make sure that they're not hunched over too much or too flat. They've just got a neutral position day to day. They obviously can move back and forwards, but they don't live in either end of the scale. Their deep neck flexors are firing. It's just a slightly more long energy to the body. And then see if you can teach people to relax their stomach muscles. To just let the diaphragm do its thing, expand your belly. The rib cage joins in a little bit, feels really nice. But if you give someone this on their own and they start getting quite good at it, because of the years and years and years of people being in a fixed position and breathing up here, the chances of them sustaining that good position is very, very small. So this is where I'm going to teach you guys a really, really special, it's like a breathing exercise. And what it's going to do is actually stretch your diaphragm. Now I'm going to demo it first. And then once I've demoed it, I want you guys to have a go at this. So I'm going to lie on my back. My knees are going to be bent. I'm going to lift my bum up and tuck my tailbone because your diaphragm attaches down onto lower portions of your thoracic and the upper portions of your lumbar. So if you can tuck your tailbone, you're pulling that part of the diaphragm. Then bring your back to the floor as flat as your body can. Lift your arms up overhead. Then you're going to breathe into the nose. And you're going to breathe out of the mouth as if you're steaming up a mirror. And when you think the breath is finished, you're going to keep going. And as you get to the end of the breath, you're tucking and reaching up so that we get that pull going into that part of the diaphragm. Because as you breathe out, the diaphragm lifts up. And so we're trying to stretch it out. So I'm going to cue the first one. You're going to do 2 on your own. Please go to your mats. Knees are bent, feet underneath your knees. Arms are up overhead. Lift your bum up, tuck your tailbone, and see if you can flatten your lumbar spine into the ground. Reach your arms up as high as you can and tuck your tailbone as much as you can as you breathe into your nose and feel everything expanding. Get it as big as you can, big, 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 big. And then steam up your mirror. keep going, 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 keep going. Don't stop, keep going right to the end of the breath. Keep going, 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 going. And then when you just have nothing left to give anymore, you can take your next inhale. Stay there, stay there. And you're going to do 2 more of these on your own, and you're going to try and go a little bit longer on your exhale every time. You're going to go a little bit longer on the exhale every time. Yeah, you're completing the breath as much as you can. The position of the lower back is tucked, and you're tucking the tailbone as the arms reach up on that exhale. You're steaming up your mirror, and the diaphragm is essentially going up towards the heart, and it's stretching all of the fibers. Your abs will contract on the exhale because you're going to the end of the exhale. That's normal. Chin towards chest. You don't need to. Just keep the back of the head on the ground because you want the deep neck flexors just to be doing their thing naturally. Keep going. And if you have chance, you can do it one more time. Butt on the floor should be okay. Yeah, butt is on the floor. Guys, one more. When you've done the last one, show me by just sitting up. Okay, now, the very first time I teach that, people are like, huh? But I have worked with people with really bad shoulders. And when I give them the diaphragm stretch, a lot of times it has a positive reaction to their pain levels. And it's just because suddenly you're shifting where the tightness is sort of gripping and holding on and pulling people into that habitual pattern. Suddenly now they've got a little bit more space, and the diaphragm can start moving a little bit more naturally. And wow, their shoulders now aren't part of that chain. So I know this, a lot of the stuff I've been sharing with you in this workshop, maybe you've heard before, but I'm hoping that's a new one for you guys, that maybe that's a little special thing you can kind of have a bit of a think about. And yeah, remember, sometimes where we have habitual patterns, it'll kind of creep into the body and it'll kind of make us sticky and tight in those areas. So it's really about really being clear about where you are directing your energy. Now, just to recap what good breathing is, my loves, good breathing is just relaxed abs, breathing into your tummy, your ribs expand. And as you breathe out, if you did want a little bit of support for the body, just think of your pelvic floor like you're pulling a tissue out of a box. It's super gentle. That's it. There'll be a little bit of activation around TVA. And that is a really nice way to breathe. Now, class this week, Tuesday and Saturday, is going to be about this type of breathing. And we want to give you guys a chance to experience that. So I'm going to send you guys a code, and you guys can join the class for 20% off, because I want you to feel that with movement so that it'll be a little bit more real to you and how to use it in the yoga practice. Because of time, I'm not going to be able to go through all of that with movement, but I think it is going to be a really, really nice thing for you to try out with movement, because the next slide is very important, my loves. Yarden, can you click us please onto the next slide, where we're going to discuss them good old yoga poses. And a few of you guys very cleverly were like, but what about in a chaturanga, or how do I apply this stuff when I'm actually just in my practice? Now, there are obviously lots of different yoga poses that we could have addressed, but I feel like because in most yoga practices, we're doing these positions a lot, I feel like this is a nice, these 4, plank, chaturanga, up dog, down dog, are really important for us. Yeah, it's Adele, my friend. Guys, can you tell me what is the common denominator between all 4 of those positions? Think, what is the same about all 4 of them? It's a push, yeah. Some of them are good, some of them are not good, yeah. What is in contact with the floor? What is in contact with the floor in all of those positions? Hands, yeah, that's all weight bearing on the hands and the feet. They are weight bearing position. And the thing that we call, what we call this, we call it a closed chain position, because both of your hands are on a non-moving surface that's always the same. Both of them are stable there. And so that's another thing to consider. Where's my little weight gone? It's all the way back here. As humans, living out in nature, if we had to just our bare hands to survive, we would lift things up and stack them as we build. We would rip roots out. We would swim probably and climb. And all of these activities are our limbs moving away from the ground, controlling weight, using the whole body to control that. So yoga has these, the scales are tipped slightly in certain things that we're habitually doing over and over. And it's okay to do these movements. These movements are wonderful, but we just have to make sure we have a little bit more balance. Now, what have we learned about weight bearing, arms by your side, arms above your head? How do we know if the shoulders are not really stable? What is something we're looking for? Yes, you guys are on it. You're looking for winging, and I'm sure you can all see image number 1. We got some serious winging going on. And that winging is, of course, something that we want to try and get away from that. Now, I gave you a strategy on how to get away from that winging. And what was it? Can you guys remember when we were doing our shrugs? What was it that helped your shoulder blades come flush? Protraction was one, yeah? And it specifically worked which muscle? Which muscle did we work? The serratus anterior. Now, guys, what I need you to understand is the serratus anterior. And you know what? I'm going to type this muscle into the chat box. Quickly look at the chat box, just in case you haven't heard of this muscle. I'm sure you have. Transverse abdominis. Transverse abdominis is another one. Glutes, your butt muscles, are another one. They all come under a little, deep neck flexors. You remember when you touched your hair and I was like, deep neck flexors, they get those upper traps relaxed. Transverse abdominis, serratus anterior, deep neck flexors, and your glutes are all what we call, and I'm going to type this into the chat box as well, just so you have it to look at. They are your proximal stability muscles. Okay, they're your proximal stability muscles. And what that means is proximal means if you were close to me, you were in my proximity, you were close to me. So proximal means closest to the midline or the spine. Yes, there are lots of other stability muscles, guys, but these ones are they're your kings sitting on the top, and then the others are your queens. And I know that's horribly sexist. My God, that's so ingrained in society. Let's call it, they are the leaders, and then underneath they have the little minions. But basically, we've got this hierarchy. And I want you to feel this with me. Let's all together go back to our yoga mats, and I want you to do let's do up dog. I want you to give me a crappy up dog. You see these when you go to yoga classes, people are hanging their neck. It's Adele's number 4 photo there where she's all neck back, elbows hyperextended, shoulders hunched towards your ears. Oh, you can't see my messages. Oh, it's because I'm sending them privately to someone. I will write them down in one moment, my loves. Give me a second. Okay, so give me a crappy up dog while I'm here and just feel how rubbish this is. Gladys is like, you are such a technological dodo, Sally. Okay, my love. So you're feeling your crappy up dog. Now, a lot of times when people are in a position like this, what do teachers tell you to do with your elbows? Now, I know you're in your up dog, so I'm going to give you the answer. Is they tell you to micro bend the arms, right? But I want you to try something different. I want you to be in your sloppy up dog, and I want you to just squeeze your bum as hard as you can. And then I want you to think of your transverse abdominis by just sort of hugging it around your organs. And then I want you to think of your serratus anterior pressing the floor away. What happened to the rest of the body? Did your joints change at all? Most people find that there's a little bit of feedback to the rest of the body without them having to consciously think about it. Like once you get your stability muscles firing, a positive reaction radiates to the whole body. Let's do the same thing in plank. Sink between your shoulder blades, deep neck flexors off, shoulders winging, butt is low. Squeeze your glutes as hard as you can. Think of your core wrapping around your organs, and then push the floor away so serratus activates. Give yourself some deep neck flexors. The whole thing changes the elbows, right? Last one, come into, actually, downward dog's a bit different. So I'm going to explain that in a second. I just wanted you to feel those two in particular. Can we go back to the slide, please? Yeah, you go off of your joints. Nice. Some of you are writing off of your joints. I think that's super, super smart. And you wanted me to write. I'm going to write it all here. Let's write deep. I'm going to stop making it private. I'm so sorry about that. How do I make it for everyone? There we go. Deep neck flexors, transverse abdominis, and glutes, and serratus. Okay, I've popped them into the chat box. The last thing there. Those are your leaders, okay? Once you get them, everything else falls into place a lot easier. Now, I want you to go back to the slide, please, Jordan, because I want people to kind of have a little look at some of the other things that are really important about weight bearing on your hands. Ooh. Technology. The next position that we're going to start discussing is your downward dog. So in plank and up dog, it's really nice to feel your proximal stability muscles. It's really easy to figure out where they are and to help them turn on. To be totally honest with you, in downward dog, it makes a really, really big difference as well. But there's something specific about downward dog that I want you guys to think about. And that is that actually a downward dog is a neutral spine. And remember before I was talking about, you know, posture and how it affects your breathing, and then your shoulder goes into a funny position. Well, if we think about it like this, oh, someone told you not to activate your glutes in the up dog. Oh my goodness, you need to come to my next workshop and I'll talk about the signs of glutes. Please follow me on Instagram, Simon and Pam. So if you think about your downward facing dog, a lot of times yoga teachers will cue people to press their chest towards their thighs. Can you just wave at me if you've heard that? Press your chest towards your thighs in a downward dog. So keep an eye on the screen, and I want you to pay attention to what's going on. So I've been at my desk all day, and I've maybe either been like this all day, right? Some people sit like this, they hang in their ligaments here. Some people hang in their ligaments here, but ideally they're not using their stability. You're going to get to feel this in a second. Then they come to yoga and they're taught to have good posture. And we're taught, oh, it's a neutral S-curve, shoulders back and down, chest is in neutral. You've got a little bit of rounding in your upper back because your scapula likes to live on that rounding. You've got a little bit of lumbar lordosis in your lower back. And that neutral S-curve are like two different curves that balance each other out. But then if we come into a downward dog and we start pressing our chest towards our thighs, what happens to that neutral S-curve? What kind of starts going on to the shape of my spine? What starts happening to the shape? It rounds, it flattens, kyphotic, okay, curves, opposing curves. Okay, I want you to look at two different down dogs now, okay? So here, I'm going to do my neutral S-curve. Here's my neutral S-curve. It's not to say that this is bad. I just want you to understand a lot of people don't even know where a neutral S-curve is. The curve should be kyphosis here and a little bit of lordosis here. The cool thing about this neutral S-curve, it gets those stability muscles that we just worked to automatically fire. Because if I had to constantly tell you serratus, TVA, glutes, deep neck flexors, you're going to really, really, really struggle to maintain that activation throughout the whole class. Now, if you go for one breath into an up dog, of course, it's a back bend. You can still have your stability muscles on. But when you're spending long amounts of time in a neutral shape, if you can come into a neutral spine, those stability muscles turn on without you needing to think about it. But as I start going into chest towards my lumbar, towards my thighs, now the spine is going into opposing curves. Now my lower back is no longer in lordosis, it's actually kyphotic, and my upper back is going, instead of kyphosis, into lordosis. Now what you need to understand about your stability muscles, I'll say it again, is they love a neutral spine. Your serratus anterior, remember what one of the things was that switched it off? We spoke about it. What happens to the spine? Counterintuitive because it's new, not because it's wrong. What happens to your serratus anterior when something happens here? Flat thoracic or hyperextended thoracic all the time. Serratus anterior is going to switch off. Now you're weight bearing on your arms and you aren't using your serratus. That shoulder blade is going to live in a very, very vulnerable position. And then you're going to go up into a handstand. And then you're going to do a three-legged dog. And then you're going to flip your dog. And you're not going to understand where that relationship is with your serratus. We're going to feel this now together. I'm going to watch you guys. I'm switching to gallery view. You guys go to your mats. And can you make sure the camera has a vague idea on you guys? It would be so nice if I can see your bodies. Yeah, actually, you guys look really good. Joanna, you look awesome. I can see your whole mat. Thanks, Evelina. Awesome, Laura. Okay, guys. So, Donna, it's going to be harder for me to see you, but I know you haven't got space, my babes. Don't worry. It's all good. I just want you to listen carefully, okay? So I want you guys to think about how the shoulders are interacting with this cue. Press your chest as much as you can through towards your legs. Press, 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 press. Let your ribs flare because a lot of times teachers cue get the head to touch the floor. Again, once in a while is fine, guys, but we're doing this over and over and over again. Allow your ribs to flare because getting your head to the floor, you have to compensate to get into that amount of extension. What's going on around your shoulders? And is your lumbar spine lordotic or kyphotic? And I'm actually looking at you guys and all of you have reversed the curves of your spine. Now, stay in downward dog. Don't move yet. Go on, Kristen. Up, up, up. Now, I don't want you to go so far back with the shoulders. I actually want to move your shoulders away from your legs. Move your shoulders away from your legs. Good. That's it. Don't move your hands. Just move the shoulders away from the legs. And I want you to bring your ribs towards each other. Bring your ribs slightly towards each other so that you're in a neutral upper back kyphotic shape. Now, this is really hard what I'm going to ask you. I want you to only isolate your lumbar spine and I want you to tilt it into lordosis. Just your lumbar spine. Don't move your ribs. Don't move your thoracic spine. Just your lumbar spine, your lower back into lordosis. A little tailbone up in the air. Very good. Now, a lot of times people lift their heels when they do that. Heels can still be down. It's just the tailbone on its own. Okay, nice. Now come back and I want you to feed back to me how that feels. We're going to talk about what the shoulder position is first. I just wanted to cover proximal stability. What did you guys feel when you were coming into more of a neutral shape with your spine? Activated serratus, someone said. Very different. Very, very different. Felt a bit more stable, cool, stable in the shoulders, stable. Shoulders very happy. TVA, stable. Core more engaged, less stress on the shoulders, lighter, way more stable. Glutes, wow, cool. Okay, quite tricky to isolate lower back. Guys, it's super hard. Quickly look at the screen. Just want you to see what that looks like because it is really hard. Remember, I can move my lumbar spine without my thoracic spine changing. And that's basically what I wanted. I wanted you guys to go from this shape. Watch my lumbar spine. This shape, my body loves because it's the middle. It's the middle. And when you look at any skeleton, you'll see we've got a curve here. We need that curve because we want our ribs not to be too flat. And we also, my skeleton's very flat right now. He's been lying in bed for too long. And we've got a little curve here. That lumbar lordosis is so important. While you're sitting watching me, let's do this together. I want you to just use your hands as much as you need to. Use your visualization. Bring yourself into a little bit of kyphosis. And then put your hand on your lower back and give me a little bit of lordosis. And 1%, not like 50 or even 100%, because you want it to be easy to breathe. And you want to be able to move from this position. And then take your hands and just gently poke around in your tummy. Maybe notice what happened to your head position. Good. Then I want you to go into a very extended position and you might feel your tummy gets tight, right? But you'll feel your rib cage flares. And probably if you spiral your hand round to your back, you'll feel the shoulder blades are pinging off your back. And then if you really connect forward into a very sloppy position, head is still forwards, deep neck flexors are off. Take your hands, wrap them around your belly, and I want you to feel what happens in your tummy. Like usually people really struggle to activate their deep core layer when they're slouched. So now go back into your neutral S curve and don't think about those stability muscles. Just let the shape of your body help you find that neutral spine, help you find those stability muscles without you needing to think about a million different things. We're trying to get away from over cueing to just getting to feel, oh, if I'm in this shape all day at my desk, and then I go to the gym, and then I go to my yoga practice 3 times a week, I'm going to have a relationship with these stability muscles. Whereas if I was always fixed in either slouching, TVA is not going to know what's going on. If I'm always hyperextended, serratus anterior is not going to know what's going on. So then to suddenly activate them in a downward dog, guys, or an upward dog, or any kind of position is really, really hard. Go back to your mat one more time. Go back into your downward dog position. And I just want you to gently push the floor away. This is the last thing I'm going to do, and then we're going to do a Q&A, okay? Just gently push the floor away. Yeah, it's very gentle because obviously there's load above your head, so you need to press the floor away. Your body weight is now going to go against gravity. Try and think of that neutral S curve in your spine. It's not a big S, it's a little baby S. Have a feel of all the stability muscles. Brielle, move your shoulders away from your legs more because it's hard for you to go into thoracic kyphosis from that deep. Yeah. Don't move your hands, just move your shoulders away from your legs. Yeah. And then you can bring your ribs in more easily. And then your tailbone can arc. There we go. Nice. Okay, guys. So you're in your neutral S curve. As you push the floor away, now think of your crease of your elbows, the crease of your elbows, turning very gently forwards towards the front of your yoga mat. So you've pushed the floor away, you're in a neutral S curve, and you're externally rotating your humerus. Just think about how that feels around your joints and your muscles, and not just around your arms, but what about around your middle body? Lisa, you've reversed the curves because your hands and feet are a bit close. Move your shoulders away from your legs and then arch your lower back into a curve so that you're a little bit more lordotic. Yeah, don't move your chest close to your thighs. Move your chest away from your thighs. Yeah, even more. And then arch your tailbone the other way. Almost there. You're getting closer. Okay, guys. Now, that strength that you've just developed throughout all of your joints, shift it into a plank position. Think of where the load is pushing your body against gravity. Your body wants to go down, right? If gravity won the battle, you would collapse. Resist gravity by gently pushing away. That's it. Contract your glutes because they're stability muscles, and without them, your whole pelvis is unstable. So please use your glutes. Please go and watch all my content around glutes. And then take your chaturanga, but don't think about collapsing between the shoulder blades. Just allow serratus to still control the movement. Yes, you can use your knees. That looks so good. Point your toes. Use your glutes, transverse abdominis, and deep neck flexors, and rise up. Feel how that maybe supports you. Brielle, you're collapsing. Push the floor away. Get your shoulders away from your ears here. Your hands should be under your shoulders, your thighs off the floor. Yeah, hands under shoulders so you're pressing and your thighs are lifting. Good, guys. Pull the navel in and transition back into your downward dog with a neutral S curve in your spine. Yes, your butt should stick out, RJ, because remember, lumbar lordosis is your tailbone is out. You know, it's not tucked underneath. And that is a neutral spine. Okay, guys, come back for me. Before you sit down on your butts again, stand up and just quickly have a little boogie on the spot because there's a lot of talking and a lot of intense energy. Shake it out. Oh, Shelby, you cutie. I can just see your legs going for gold. Do me 5 big squats. 1, 2, 3. Cuties up and down. Minnie is going for it. Minnie, lower. Okay, guys, do a 180 jump to the back and a 180 jump back. 180 jump the other way, 180 jump back, big 360, whoosh, all the way around and the other way. Okay, hopefully your brains are on. Come back to me. So I could spend a lot of time going over every pose and every joint and every muscle, and it's too much, guys. I want to simplify things so that it's easier. Stability muscles, once they're on, everything else works much, much better. And number two, a neutral S curve in your spine. It's not that you should always be fixed in a neutral S curve, but if we teach people what that is when they're at work and they're playing with their kids and they're out in life, they know about this curve and they know about their stability muscles because they automatically are engaged. And what's powerful about that is then when they come back and they start doing their yoga practice, they've had that relationship with these muscles on a neurological level. It's not you having to cue it every time because they have no mind-body connection. Is it normal for my lumbar spine to be very bendy in lordosis? Next, let's go into some Q&A, guys. And I do suspect we're going to run over a little bit. Guys, if you need to go bang on, please do. We're going to send you the recording of this. It's going to be in your Live Kick account. You can obviously catch up with the Q&A later. But I do want to give you guys a little chance to ask some questions. And if I don't get to your question today, don't even worry about it. We're going to do that email. You're going to email me. I'm going to type my email in again for you guys, just so that everybody can see it. This is my personal email. You can email me anytime. Celeste Pereira, celeste.pereira@gmail.com. It's right there. Okay, so I'm going to open up the chat box. Okay, and I'm going to start scrolling up a little bit. I find it very difficult to keep lordosis, but muscles activated. I have a lot of trouble feeling the difference. Guys, let's think back to the very first time you ever did crow pose. How was that? Me? So bad, I face planted and I got scared. Edwina, you're like, yeah. Guys, I got scared because my parents spent a lot of money getting my teeth straight. And I was worried that they were just going to fall out. Yeah, Taryn's like, no ways. This is not natural. But guys, after practice, it gets a little bit easier. Now, what position are you in right now? What position are you doing right now? It's the position we do more than anything else. Exactly. We are sitting down. Now, I want you to pay attention to what's the shape of your lumbar spine right now. Flat, maybe tucked underneath, maybe curved. Now, suddenly I'm going to ask you, oh, in all positions, in all neutral spine positions, can you give me lumbar lordosis? Those muscles don't know how to activate. You sit down more than any other activity, and the easiest way for the body to sustain an unnatural body position is to collapse into the ligaments. Those muscles in your lower back don't know how to fire. So if I put you in a difficult position like downward dog and suddenly expect them to work, it's going to be really, really hard. So don't worry if you find it hard. That's really normal. Can poor running form affect shoulders? Yes, try and think why. What are two things that I specifically said can affect your shoulders? Think about it. Was breathing and posture. So if you're running with dodgy posture, also if your thoracic spine is stiff and you're not getting reciprocal movement, your shoulders are going to be trying to give you that reciprocal movement. You're going to get very unstable in your shoulders. I can't believe I got to stick my butt out for downward dog. And you got to shake it around. Should the shoulders still be protracted on the lowering phase of chaturanga? So guys, this is one I did want to mention this and I forgot. So thank you so much, Caroline, for reminding me. For a very long time, I did teach to keep the protraction as people lower down. But the more I spoke to physios and osteos and people that are much, much more knowledgeable than me, they explained that, remember that scapulohumeral rhythm, it applies even as we move into our chaturangas. So I want you guys to stick your arms out like this, get your protraction, imagine you're pushing the floor away. And as you lower your body weight towards the floor, I want you to just pull the shoulders back, but without letting them wing off the ground, off the back. Now, let's say you're like, girl, I teach some beginners yoga, and these people cannot chaturanga even from their knees without their shoulder blades lifting off of their back. They just don't have the strength. One of the things that can activate it, we spoke about, was just pressing into load. We used the wall, we used the floor, and teaching them from their knees to keep that load as they lower. Now, if their shoulders stay in protraction, for a beginner, it's actually really effective because it's going to give them that feedback. But for any of you guys who are starting to, as they get stronger, they are going to want to start getting a little bit better at getting the shoulder to just move along with the arm bone. We always want this shallow socket to move nicely with the arm bone. Of course, you can move the arm like this and you can get really lovely lubrication there. That's so good. But especially under load, as you move into this very vulnerable position for the shoulder, you want to make sure that the scapula is moving along with the arm bone. Also, guys, if you did want to chat to me personally, just raise your hand and I can spotlight you. It'll be nice to see your beautiful faces. It feels a bit unnatural. Of course, remember, Lisa, it's new, my love. It's going to take a little bit of getting used to. And it's not to say that you can never do another type of down dog. It's just that it's a nice one to give people a chance to find their stability muscles. How to cue someone who can't feel the up, down glide of the shoulder blades. Those shoulder blades might have rigidity. Remember when I spoke about scapulohumeral rhythm? And I said a lot of teachers have been cueing shoulders back and down and then just moving the arms on their own. Well, guys, those shoulder blades don't know how to move. It's going to be very, very difficult. So you're going to have to just start baby, lifting the arms up, shrugging the shoulders up and down, getting used to movement coming into the upper back. Then you can maybe do that in a downward dog position. Little tiny movements will get bigger with practice. One of the aspects, if you want to work on the shoulders with students, which one of the aspects would you talk about first? That's a great question, Veronica. Do you know what? If I'm working with a private, it's very personal. If I'm working with a group of people, I would start with their breathing. Because guys, people don't know how to breathe. They don't know how to relax their tummy muscles. They're so gripped and overloaded in their stomach. And as their tummies are overloaded, their pelvic floor becomes hypertonic as well. And this can lead to things like stress incontinence. And up with the shoulders, to bring it back to what we're talking about, if the shoulders are always being used in a certain way, and then those same muscles are being used in your plank and chaturangas, and they're never pulling and they're never breathing into their belly, the poor mechanics just get, the scales are tipped. And that's what we need to try and get away from. My shoulders are really crunchy and clicky. And someone else asked this question. I didn't get around to it. So I'm so glad you asked this. Yeah, shoulders will be clicky and crunchy if they haven't moved naturally for a long time. That's totally normal. The more you start moving them in a natural way, the more that will get away. Yeah, it's really hard to keep the ribs in. And again, that's because you haven't got that neutral S curve. This is why, Ruth, I'm always preaching about that neutral S curve, because if you're used to it when you're sitting and playing with your kids and running and climbing trees, when you come into your down dog, it's going to be a lot more easy for you to find those positions. We need to strengthen or release deep neck flexors. Such a good question. Guys, we need to strengthen them. So sit like this with me. Show me your very sexy giraffe neck. Greg Ma, you're so cute. You're like, keep it there, man. We're going to do a little exercise. Yeah. Now, imagine a wall behind you. And everybody pull your head back against that imaginary wall and show me your sexiest double chin. Guys, you look super sexy. Taryn's like, what? Now put the head forward again. Yeah, and back. Good. And you're not moving up with the head. Alex, keep your chin down as touch for me, my love, because it's just forward and back. Forward and back. Forward. Now give me your sexiest chicken neck. Go on, Lisa. Show me your sexiest chicken neck. This is how you strengthen your deep neck flexors. Stage 1. Stage 2, you can get a stretchy band. You can also get people to lie face down and do it. Lie their back on the edge of a poof or a sofa. Their head is not on anything and they've got to keep their head in place without letting it flop backwards. Question for you guys, can you look up and use your deep neck flexors at the same time? And how does that feel different? And how's that different to what we normally do when we're looking up? I just collapse. I really have to train these weak muscles to engage. Can you use your deep neck flexors looking down? If you had to look at your phone and engage your deep neck flexors, how does that change the relationship of the head on the body? Okay, good work, you guys. The next question that came in is, if you have an exaggerated anterior pelvic tilt in that down dog, could this make it worse? Well, if you have your ribs in, it shouldn't do. So remember, it's always the opposing curves that we're aiming for. If both of the curves end up arcing like this, my hands are not helping me out here, then we've only got one area where all the load is transferred. We need two curves. So get your ribs in enough, get into that neutral kyphotic position, and it's going to be a lot easier to hold that shape. I am now going to scroll all the way down because I want to make sure I get some of the lower down questions. Apart from working on posture and shoulder engagement in each of our practices, would you recommend investing in posture correctors? No. Why? Why are posture correctors a bad idea? You tell me. I'm really triggered. Can you see how angry I just became? Passive. Thank you for saying that, you guys. It's freaking passive. When you take it off, what's changed in your brain? Nothing. Nothing has changed. You've not had to do a single thing. The posture corrector has been keeping you there. When you take it off, you're now going to be even weaker because you haven't had to use your own postural muscles. Anyway, I'm going to get really angry in a minute and start smashing things up. So I'm going to move on to the next question. I have a dull ache on the inside of my right scapula towards the spine. I'm thinking this might be rhomboid. Could be a number of things. Definitely go and get checked out by a physio. Sometimes it's a nerve. Depends how severe it is. Depends where it travels to. So there's a lot going on there. Should shoulders shift forwards before lowering? For chaturanga. Thank you for bringing that up. This is a big debate. Okay, chaturanga, guys. Because in chaturanga, it mimics a lot of the postures that we do. Crow pose, galavasana, side crow. And to get those poses stacking, we need the elbows on top of the wrists. And we need to shift forward to get that stacking. But guys, a lot of people aren't strong enough to control that. And so I just want to encourage you guys to know that it's nothing bad will happen to your shoulders if your elbows go a little bit behind and you control your chaturanga a little further back. As you get stronger, you can start shifting it forwards. Now, the reason why I say this is a debate. Do you guys know Lara Hyman? If you don't follow Lara Hyman, you'll absolutely love her. She's amazing. She's a physio. She teaches yoga. She's a genius. She is super against people going forward into the chaturanga. Now, I've listened to all the reasonings, and I have to say that from my perspective, I personally come from the frame of reference that if you are strong enough to tolerate that movement, I think it's safe. But I don't know if it's safe for everyone in the beginning. So I don't know how you guys feel about this one. It'll be interesting to hear what you put into the chat box, and I'll put that into the document I'm going to send you guys. I've been taught to protract shoulders in chaturanga when move slightly forward and then lower to the floor. It's very common to be taught that, my loves. But I think a lot of times we are taught things and it hasn't progressed with the literature and the research. So maybe go on Google, do a little research, go and ask Lara Hyman, do a bit of experimenting in your body and with your students, and just realize that sometimes the way we've been doing things for a long time isn't necessarily the best way. We've got to kind of keep modifying. And that's the beautiful thing about movement and literature and scientific research, is that it does always change. And that should be a positive thing for us. Okay, how do you make sure that sticking the butt out in down dog won't encourage your butt issues? I've spoken about butt issues. What do you mean? Do you have a specific key to preventing the hamstrings too much? So if you keep the ribs in, you should be okay. You really should be okay. And if people are taught to listen to their body and not be shape orientated, but actually go, oh, I feel that, that's enough, it should be okay. Okay, engagement, each of our practice, would you remember? Oh no, I got triggered by that one. I remember that question. Okay, jaw problems. We're going a little off topic with jaw problems. Please write to me privately and I'll see if I can help. I think I'm reaching the end. Oh no, there's still 43 questions. But guys, we've already gone about 8 minutes over. Should we just do like a little happy little happy moment together. And if your question hasn't been answered, can you please email it to me? I'm going to put my email again into the chat for you all. And then you guys can just flood my inbox. I'm going to regret telling you guys this. And I'm going to send you that document, okay? It's just here. Okay, let's just have a little moment where we're all together. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. All of your hard work, all of your amazing energy. Can you all go to gallery view just for a quick second? Put your fingertips near the camera and just send each other good jujus. It's so hard doing this long in front of a laptop. It's so hard. Maybe I had to change the way you think about how you use your body, and that's hard. Sometimes we have to like learn all new terminology, like a new language. Send each other good jujus for your hard work, your amazing energy. Let's all put our hands together and bow to each other's greatness. You guys are so, so wonderful. Your questions, your answers. I am deeply grateful for your wonderfulness. You really are special people. Oh, there's a little cutie there, I see. There's like little kids popping into the screen. It always makes me happy when I see children and animals. Guys, big kiss. Big kiss. Oh, and if you guys want to come, we're going to get 30% off on my Tuesday class with DJ Soul Rising. The code is CXBGST, all uppercase. C for Charlie, X for X-ray, B for big, G for gut, S for serratus, T for transverse abdominis. CXBGST. If you come to my class, we're going to do the breathing thing, okay? So maybe that'll be a fun thing to experience with me. I love you guys. Thank you so much for all your hard work.